Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там пивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Street Army sends its regards.
Хотите жить – бегите. Хотите жить – сдавайтесь в плен. Россия не получит новую территорию Украины. Россия присоединит себя к той катастрофе, которую она принесла на оккупированную территорию нашей страны. Оккупант заполняет могилами захваченную территорию Украины. И все больше могил на территории самой России. Ценой того, что один человек в России хочет продолжать эту войну, кто хочет войны больше, чем жизнь. Вашей жизни, граждане России.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 538 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again. And of course, Ukraine gained some more ground.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 48 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. And today has been an impressive day. The Russian government called an emergency meeting because the economy is crashing. The Ukrainians have been able to take ground almost the entirety of the southern front over the past 24 hours alone. And the Ukrainians are also appearing to possibly create a joined front line over the Dnipro River. It is a huge day. It is a massive day news-wise. But before we get into that, I also have to go back and revisit the Sunday fundraiser for just a minute, because that fundraiser managed to raise $8,000 for Revived Soldiers of Ukraine. An amazing amount, and able to save loads of lives through the great rehabilitation that the Lee Spring Army will be helping the Revived Soldiers of Ukraine to continue to do. And I gotta thank all of y'all for doing that, and I gotta thank all of y'all for being here tonight, because tonight is going to be a good night, news-wise. But moving on, and also a lot of people are saying, hey, it's day 2 of law school. We actually went through a full day of law school yesterday and today. Been doing okay so far, so hopefully that keeps up. But it is a little tiring, but nevertheless, this is really the best thing to do in the afternoon. It honestly, at this point, feels a little bit like a winding down. It feels great. So I'm more
this is like vacation right here, like, you know, stream style vacation.
I know, it's great. But anyways, we are going to be moving into the breaking news of the title tonight, and that is going to be found within the Southern Front. We have been getting news and information from across the entirety of the front line, specifically in between the directions of Velika Novosilka and the village chain, and all the way over to the area of Rabotne, showing that Ukrainian forces have been making considerable advances, and rather large advances as far as the strategic level of the battlefield is looking right now. And so we're going to be moving in to Velika Novosilka first, or more so the village chain attached to Velika Novosilka. Something big happened here today, and that is that Ukrainian forces have taken the entirety of Urozhaine as of today. It has been confirmed. They are at the very southern end road in Urozhaine, which leads them directly to Zaitvina Bajanya, or directly down into Staromynivka itself. This is huge news, as Urozhaine was the last bit of defense that the Russians had at that part of the village chain, which now means that they're going to have to fight from Zaitvina Bajanya, which is a less defensible position than Urozhaine was, and I'll be trying to show that to y'all right here. So here is the village chain, and we can see Staromyorsk and Urozhaine right here. And Urozhaine, from what we understand, was actually on a little bit of an elevation, about 20 or 30 feet above Staromayorsk. And while that is a small amount, that 20 to 30 foot difference in the hill slope over here gave the Russians just a small advantage to be able to fire into Staromayorsk, a little bit better than the Ukrainians could fire back into Urozhaine with small arms. That is now completely negated, because from what we understand, the Ukrainians are moving towards Zavitne Bzhanya as of right now. The Russians are going to be on the low ground on this side of the river, and the Ukrainians will also have complete control of the end of the highway up here heading into Staromanivka. So if they control the high ground, it is entirely possible that the Russian defenses in Zavitne Bzhanya may be bypassed completely. And so really, Zavitne Bzhanya is almost nothing as far as a defensive structure, and now the Russians are going to be leaning entirely on the last village in the village chain, which is Staromanivka. And this is the worst case scenario that we could have ever seen for the Russians. The Ukrainians, according to the Russian defensive doctrine, were never supposed to make it this far down the village chain, because this is the end. If the Ukrainians take this, there's really nothing stopping the Ukrainians from pushing further south through villages that are far less populated and aren't really on advantageous terrain. They're more so just level with the road, and they don't really provide any defensive ability. And so once the Ukrainians take Staromanivka, it's practically over for Russian forces in this area until the Ukrainians hit the Surovikin line, which is around 5 to 7 miles south. Even then, they may be able to bypass that completely as well, because if the Russians know what's good for them, they will be fighting tooth and nail for Staromanivka. And so if they lose it, the Russian units in this area, either the brigade or the division level unit that's here, will be shattered in the defense of this town, and may not be able to provide any kind of actual defense for the Surovikin line further south, about 5 to 7 miles south of Staromanivka. But we got one video clip from here today showing that a Russian APC that was withdrawing from the town, we understand that the Russians got pushed out, and also I'll be trying to show y'all where this is in Urozhaine. It's about right here, somewhere around this area, because you can see the little shack right there, and there's a little country road that shoots off the side. We're assuming that this is right in this area. From the story that we're kind of getting from this was one of the last Russian APCs to leave Urozhaine today. It picked up some of the few Russian soldiers that were left here and was beginning to retreat out of the town, either to the defenses at Zavitne Bzhanya or towards Staromanivka to drop off those soldiers there. It wouldn't make it out of the city. It ended up getting hit by Ukrainian fire and then destroyed by cluster munitions just a little while later. And so we can see the BMP racing out of the town. Is one of the last left. You got to remember, there's almost nothing but Ukrainians behind them, and now we can see that the BMP has become the victim of a cluster shelling. And I gotta say, it immediately turns into a cluster F in that BMP, because you can see crew members just running all over, and the BMP rolling out of control while there are still infantry inside. The BMP continues to burn, gets hit by another cluster round, and then it just sits there and continues to roast. But for the most part, we can see that Russian defenses at Urozhaine have been completely defeated. Entirely. And it's a great thing to know, because once again, it's either Staromanivka at this point or bust. Zavitne Bzhanya isn't even worth really talking about as a defensive position. It's on the low ground, the Ukrainians can bypass it, and they can fire down into it almost like a cauldron, because the high ground is on every other side on the eastern end of the Mokry-Yali River. So they could be on the northern side of Zavitne Bzhanya and firing into it. They could be on the eastern side. Hell, they could even bypass the village entirely and be firing on it from the north, east, and south for the most part. And there's really nothing the Russian defenders could do unless if they keep control of that side of the river. But moving on from that little clip we got up there near Urozhaine and moving behind the lines, we also saw that Ukrainian counter-battery fire has once again been doing the Lord's work in destroying Russian SPGs, which are the only thing at this point in the southern front that give the Russians a shot in hell of holding any defensive position. This SPG in particular that was destroyed was a 2S3 Akitsia. A 2S3 is one of your larger SPGs that the Russians have. It has a 155mm main gun as its armament, and I'll be trying to show that to y'all. Let's see here. Actually, 152.4mm D22 howitzer. but this is a larger version of a Russian SPG that you would have seen used by the Soviet Union. There were two major mobile SPGs, the 2S1, which you will see a lot on every side because there are literal thousands of them that were made, so it's really easy to keep them running. And then there are these. These were supposed to be the heavier artillery. Of course, the Russians tried to replace this with what you can kind of see in this picture, which is the Mista S. But, of course, the Russians, with budget concerns, can't really build their army to be the most modern across the board. So a lot of the Russians' mobile artillery still falls into this 2S3 and the 2S1 category. And this thing got floored. We don't know what hit it, but it was a very precise hit. The title suggests that it may have actually been a HIMARS missile that destroyed that 2S3. But we can see it right there. And we now see it getting hit directly. There was not even a ranging shot. It just got blown up. And we now see the ammo going off. The ammo mostly was scattered in the explosion. It hit, from what we understand, directly under the gun mantle where the turret and the hull meets. And we now see the fire spewing out of the back, kind of like someone who has Taco Bell. And so with that, that's the end of that clip. Oh, man, I'm telling you. I'm
telling you, that was graphic. Oh, my goodness.
But with that, that's the end of that clip right there. And great to see that whatever the Ukrainians were using to strike that 2S3, they didn't even have to fire 2 shots. It was the 1 shot, and they destroyed it outright. Crew and everything, which is a pretty good thing as far as the Ukrainians are concerned, because that means that that crew will not be put into another SPG, and their experience will not transfer over in the Russian army. It ends in that SPG. Moving on from that, this was something that was absolutely bizarre. I've got to explain this to y'all because the bizarreness of this video is just insane. So, way back in the Cold War, before drones and satellite footage, or really aerial reconnaissance, was as good as it is now and as hard to detect and intercept, a lot of the Russian armor relied on actual recon units on the ground to go forward, engage the enemy, find out their numbers, and then report that back to the armored unit, which would then get a better idea of what they're going up against. To do that, they would use this little vehicle, and I'll show you one, called a BRDM-2. The BRDM-2 was made in the tens of thousands, probably one of the most commonly produced armored vehicles in the world. This is a picture of one right here. Armed with only a 14.5mm machine gun, this thing is really just a glorified Jeep with a small amount of armor. It can't really stop much. It can't even really stop most rifle rounds with that armor, and a machine gun to go with it. So all in all, fairly bare bones. And we haven't seen anyone using these for the most part in the war, unless if it's a very rare instance. And even on the Russian side, we very rarely see these things being used behind the lines, because the premise of this kind of an armored car, an armored recon car, is largely obsolete in the modern world, especially with drones being able to find out the same information while keeping a crew safe from harm or having to go up to the battlefield to possibly get themselves killed. We've seen that these things have kind of been phased out entirely and are very rarely used, and if they are, they're almost entirely used for transport at this point of smaller amounts of equipment. But nevertheless, the Russians are in such a bad state in the southern front around Zaporizhia that not only are they whipping out the T-62s and the T-54s to bring onto the front lines, they are bringing back Soviet-era recon units to try and figure out where the Ukrainians are and what kind of force numbers they have. And that means that this Jeep with some thin plate armor on it is being sent up to the front lines with a crew in it to try and figure out where the Ukrainians are. And we saw that today. The video description says that it tried to fire some pot shots at the Ukrainians. What this thing was actually doing, because this was an old part of Soviet doctrine, is that it went forward, it found the Ukrainians, and since it has a machine gun, it fires at them, tries to draw their fire, and then based off of how much fire they start receiving and from where, they can kind of get an idea of where the Ukrainians are. It didn't end up working well because the whole reason that this system went obsolete, which is the drone, ended up destroying it. The drones just ended up kamikazing this thing, and we could see the BRDM-2 doing what it would have done under Soviet doctrine, which is a run and gun. You can see it firing right there as it's going about 40 miles an hour through a field. It has no stabilizer for the gun, so the rounds are just going everywhere. But what they're trying to do is draw fire to see how many Ukrainians there are. From what we understand, really no Ukrainian units fired back. They just watched this thing drive by like an idiot, and then they brought in the FPV drone to do the real work. So now we can see the BRDM racing down the road, like an idiot. They're going, Vadim, blad, speed up. It's so dangerous out
That's
here.
the duck boat going that fast?
Oh, wait a minute. Hold up. Hold up. They said that this was a BRDM2.
Man, I was about to say, there's no way that thing's going that fast.
Yeah,
that's a whole different vehicle, looks like.
Well, actually, you wouldn't believe it, Matthew. Those little BRDM2s were speed demons. Like, I'll pull it up again, but I think their top speed on the road was like 90 miles an hour or something. It was insane, actually. But let me see. Let's see. Power to weight. Let's see here. Where is their top speed? Engine, power to weight, maximum speed. So it could go at a top speed of 62 miles per hour, which is actually fairly fast for, in military
I need to
terms.
see that to believe it.
Oh, I promise you. You can see it. These things are actually relatively cheap because there were so many of them made. You can buy one online. They're like $10,000 to $8,000 in running condition. You don't even have to do anything to them. They just come operational. But these things can scoot. If you ever watch like training videos from the Soviet Union, these things went like fast everywhere. On road, off road, wherever you want to see it, it was going. And the whole purpose of the vehicle is that this thing was made with speed in mind, because that's really all it had going for it. It didn't have any firepower, it didn't have any armor, so they had to put everything into the speed and pray that that would allow the recon to survive, so that way they could get some information back to them. But moving on from the BRDM, which is an interesting vehicle in its own right, that is a BMD-4, if I'm correct. And let me go pull that up, because that is not a BMD. Yep, that is a BMD-4 right there. And here's a picture of one, just so that we can see it a little bit better. And let me see if I can get y'all one showing the back of it. Here we go. So that's a picture of the rear part of the APC, and we can see the same kind of layout here. So this is certainly not a BRDM like the title suggested. This is a BMD-4, but doing the same strategies and doctrines that a BRDM-2 would have done if it was used. But we can see the FPV drone coming on down. And going, oh my lord. I'm telling you this, the turret crew did not get out of this one most likely, because this one landed right at the base of the turret, where the RPG round that's mounted to this drone is facing directly inwards at it at an angle. The crew probably didn't have a fun time with this one. When we see it coming in, hitting the BMD, the explosion. And there we have it. A BMD-4, not a BRDM-2, which would have been relatively inexpensive but still stupid to use. That was actually a pretty pricey little APC. Those are fairly new, only issued into service, and let me make sure I got this correct. BMD-4 was introduced into service in 2004. So as far as the Russians are concerned, this is a fairly new APC, and they just lost one. These things cost, I think if I remember the ballpark price, somewhere around the same price as a BMP-3, which is around $600,000 to $750,000 US dollars. So they just lost a $600,000 APC trying to conduct recon, because they don't really have any other way in that part of the front line to figure out what the Ukrainians' forces look like. But moving on,
I like how the vehicle really didn't even have a manufacturer on it. It just said Volgograd like tractor factory or something as who made it.
Dude, that is the manufacturer. That's the name of the manufacturer.
And it sounds like some random warehouse out in the woods or something that made it.
Yeah,
look at that.
Yeah, look at that. It's a whole company. What's the weird thing about like Soviet industry is that their names sound so simple. It's like the Johnson and Johnson like car plant. It's like it doesn't sound big, but this thing produces a lot of stuff. Like these plants are massive. Like if you actually saw a satellite image of this thing, it's insane.
Oh, look, an old Soviet tractor plant.
Oh, by the way, yeah, we can actually find this, believe it or not, because I just saw where it was. It's in Volgograd, formerly known as Stalingrad. So let me go and try and find y'all the factory. And let's see, it's not down there. Let me move up the shoreline. This is probably it right here. This massive compound is probably the tractor factory.
Interesting. That's a pretty large place if that's actually it.
Yeah, let me make sure that it's not anywhere else. It may actually be this. The Volgorodsky. No, that's like an aluminum thing. So that's not it. It's one of these massive factories though, and these factory compounds are huge. But nevertheless, that's where it comes from, and it doesn't really look like it stood up well. It got hit, and that was it. But with that, we're going to be moving on from that little bit of news and on into our next one, moving on towards Robotny. And What we saw at Urozhaine today was impressive, to say the least, but we've got to work our way over there. And behind the lines near the village of Basan, we saw that the Ukrainians were able to destroy a Russian S-300 missile launcher, surface-to-air missile launcher, from the area around that village. It was actually a pretty good hit. And so let me show this to y'all. Chad music included, of course. Oh, yeah. But we can see the S-300 system right there. Well, you see the Ukrainians, of course, getting a little bit of info as to where it is. And now we can see the S-300 launchers. That's the target that will look like a fireworks store if it blows up. Vadim, bled, put all the launchers in one spot. And we can also see another launcher. And we can see what appears to be a ZIL. Actually,
man, that truck pulled up just at the right time. Perfect timing.
Man, that truck pulled up and said, special delivery. And then they just get greased. But we can see the S-300 sitting out there in the field. And now we can see them throwing up the card, letting us know that things are about to explode. And we can see them once again highlighting the S-300 batteries and their locations. I wonder what it feels like to work on a SAM battery for the Russian army, because they put these things, like they have to be, in the wide open. Like, there's nowhere even to hide. If that thing gets hit, it's about a half mile to the next tree line from where these things are. But we can now see the first one being hit down there by some artillery. And where the hell is this drone? Is it a U-2? This thing's like 60,000 feet in the air. But we can see it looking back down at the launchers.
And what's up with this, like, farm-like thing? Like, they're in squares and stuff? Like, perfect squares.
I think that's farming.
Not perfect squares like that.
Whoa,
it's like Minecraft plot me.
Oh, come on. Well, let's go to the area. Let's see what we got. Let's see. So let me find the area that was kind of in. So there's Urozhaine. It was somewhere.
See, it's all chaotic everywhere else.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like in some areas, it's like it's just like you see in the video. It's like perfect little squares.
Yeah, I mean, I guess.
I mean, what happened? Anyways, moving on back to the video. You know what they just hit, man? You know one of the first things that they hit in this clip?
What's that?
The radar for the whole battery. There's only one of these radar systems for an entire S-300 battery. If you knock out that radar, you've knocked out the ability for this battery to even function. And that was the first thing they hit, was the fuel truck for the radar and the radar itself. So the whole battery just went out on that hit, and then it's just a matter of destroying everything else piecemeal, but it's not really like it can even do anything at this point. Best air defense in world, blade. Now we can see the Ukrainians went through and destroyed the rest of the actual launcher systems as well. And with that, that's the end of the clip. But absolutely wonderful to see that the Ukrainians were able to knock out an entire S-300 battery. No bones about it. That's not even an exaggeration. If you knock out the radar, they have to get a replacement radar integrated into that SAM battery for it to function. So for now, an entire SAM battery is gone in the southern part of Ukraine due to that hit. Moving on from that, it is now time for us to get to Urozhaine. Deep State UA showed that they made advances today, but from what we're understanding, these advances may actually be a little bit conservative in their measurement, because it doesn't show a massive advance, but from what we've seen today in video and picture evidence, it does look like the Ukrainians must have made some considerable ground, at least more than about a half kilometer from what we're assuming in most directions. So starting off with our first clip, we saw something amazing. It was the first picture of an actual Challenger 2 on the front lines. There it is.
What do you know? Look at that.
What do you know? I mean, it's wonderful. It's great. The Challenger 2, only 2 of them have been destroyed in war, and those 2 were destroyed by friendly fire. Nothing else has destroyed a Challenger 2. Of course, we may be proven wrong in this war because nothing's indestructible, but it's still an amazing tank. And this is the first time that we've seen actual evidence of a Challenger 2 not in the area of the Southern Front, but on the front lines active. That is the first time. And also, they put a massive, cope cage on that thing. It is huge. It covers the whole top of the turret.
That is huge.
Man, this big. It's pretty big, boy. But moving on into the next picture, we also saw that they were using Martyr 1s in the field. We don't know what variant, that may be a Martyr 1A2 or an A3, not exactly sure, but they were using Martyrs, which is a first. And we also saw a striker. This video right here, from what we understand, may have actually been taken by a Russian Lancet drone. And from how the story goes, the Lancet hit the striker, but the striker continued to operate, and we couldn't really tell if the interior had received any damage or not from that hit. Nevertheless, also one of the few times we've ever seen strikers in action on the front lines as well. Moving on to the next picture, of course, that's kind of showing what this map says, the strategic overview of the front lines is, and then one of the division emblem, well, one of the brigade emblems of the brigades that is active in the Urozhaine area. But we're seeing that a lot of new tech was used just today on the battlefield, and from what we could tell with video evidence coming out, the Ukrainians are making massive ground. For example, here they are resting in the remains of a former Russian position. You see the BMP-1, of course, blown to bits, and we can see the turret of a BMP-3, which is a totally separate APC from the one we just saw burned out in the first part of the video. And its turret is sitting here too, so somewhere in the area there's a destroyed BMP-3, but we don't know where it is. But that's the remains of a Russian position from the fighting around Urozhaine, and it's clearly showing that the Russians are getting slammed. These losses are fairly fresh because they're not even really rusted over. They're still largely okay. They're not that bad off. See, the BMP, pretty good condition. And when I say pretty good condition, I mean as good as a conscript in the Russian army keeps a vehicle. That's as good as it is. So it's a fresh knockout. And then this turret here, very little signs of rusting. And the little bit we see most likely came from the fire that blew this turret off of the BMP-3 and then had the turret land here. Beyond that, we're not seeing the usual amount of rusting from a vehicle that has been here for weeks. And so that BMP-3 was knocked out fairly recently, most likely in the current fighting. With that, we're going to be moving on from that clip and a little bit behind the lines, because this is the first time we've ever seen this in the war. The Ukrainians have pushed forward a decent amount today. We don't know how much, and of course, we wouldn't even say how much on stream because that is an operational security risk to all the Ukrainians that may currently be in that area. But the Ukrainians, from their frontline positions today, sent up a drone and just sent it straight up in the air. It ended up getting up about 3,000 feet high, and it looked southwest. And for the first time ever, from what we can tell, Ukrainian front lines have gotten so south that a Ukrainian drone can see Tokmak, and not in the very edge of the horizon. It is now within plain view. The entire city is. And that's a promising sign. Tokmak is the last major bastion or defensive position that the Russians could hold on these major highways before the Ukrainians get on the highway to Melitopol. If Tokmak falls, the Ukrainians have halfway achieved their original offensive objectives of reaching Melitopol and splitting the Russian front lines into two segments. The Crimean side, which would include the Kherson Oblast that the Russians control, and the Donbass, which would then be a completely other segment. If the Ukrainians were able to split that front line in two, and it's now starting to appear that's becoming a little bit more of a reality as time keeps on going by. With Tokmak in sight, it's only a matter of time now before the Ukrainians actually do make it through the Surovikin line and into Tokmak and then retake it. If they are able to cut that land bridge and make it all the way down to Melitopol by the end of this year, they will be severing really the only stable Russian supply line heading into the rest of the southern front near Kherson and also into Crimea. Continued with more attacks on the bridge, like we've been seeing the Ukrainians conducting, that may also mean Crimea is completely cut off. There will be no supplies coming in over land. There will be no supplies coming in over bridge. There will only be a very small trickle from the ferries that would most likely be contracted to transport the supplies from the small, and I mean small, port of Chuska all the way over to Kerch, which is about a 4-mile jaunt, but when you have to load all the cargo onto a ship, then have the ship move across the strait, and then unload that on the other side, it becomes incredibly laborious. There's only so many ships that can be involved in that due to the size of the ports on both ends, and that means that there's a far smaller amount of supplies that will be making it into Crimea than would have made it over the Kerch Bridge or through the land bridge. And so if the Ukrainians are able to achieve this, they may end the war through all intensive purposes, because the Russians will inevitably lose Crimea at that point just due to lack of supplies. The Donbass would still hold, but the Russians, in reality, they don't really care that much about the Donbass. Sure, there's some natural gas deposits there, some coal, and some some iron deposits, which you can create steel out of. But the Russians weren't really going into this war looking to conquest land for any kind of real economic gain. The reason why this war even began in 2014 was because they were wanting to keep the Russian Black Sea Fleet in Crimea. And interestingly enough, speaking of keeping the Russian Black Sea Fleet in Crimea, an interesting statement was made today as a suggestion. And I have to preface that immediately. It was a suggestion and one that was just thrown out as a wild idea by the NATO General Secretary Stoltenberg in Brussels today. And this one's actually been making the rounds, and a lot of people kind of went out of their way to not understand what Stoltenberg was getting at, because he was just throwing out every single option, regardless of how offensive it was or was not. But he said today that it was a possibility that Ukraine could give up some of their territory in exchange for joining NATO. This, of course,
also, real quick correction, by the way, it wasn't the NATO Secretary General. It was some guy in his office. I think the Undersecretary or something like that. And there's Stian Jensen, I believe it was.
You're absolutely right. I got that wrong. But Stian Jensen, not Stoltenberg, sorry, correction there. We don't want to give him that kind of words because, that wouldn't be right. But anyways, Stian Jensen made a statement today that they could join the alliance immediately if they were able to broker a peace with the Russians that ended up giving away some of their territory. That was immediately rebutted by saying it was just a suggestion and it wasn't anything to be seriously considered. And of course, it wasn't even seriously considered at all. The Ukrainians immediately shot that down within the hour, according to Pravda, which stated that Oleksiy Danilov, who is the Secretary of Ukrainian National Security and Defense, said that giving away any territory or even leasing Crimea to the Russians is something that would never happen under this Ukrainian government. He made that quite clear. And I don't even think we really need to check with President Zelensky on that. We already know what the stance is from the Ukrainian government across the board. They will reclaim all of their territory by the time this war is over. It's either that or bust. And I don't think they're going to be going bust anytime soon. It looks like they're doing pretty good. Speaking of going bust, one thing that's interesting, Matthew, you remember that video from the Vistula River where we saw that guy with a fanny pack and they alleged that this guy was the one putting up the Wagner stickers?
I do remember that one.
Turns out he was the guy putting up the Wagner stickers because him and another fellow were arrested today by the Polish government and they are being charged with espionage.
That fella? And who put this out?
According to the statement here, Poland's International Security Agency arrested 2 Russians who were putting up Wagner recruitment stickers in Krakow and Warsaw. So this guy up here was the guy putting it up in Krakow. This guy, of course, was the one putting it up at the Vistula River in Warsaw. But
Interesting. Now, those could be the guys, but I will say that from what I've seen, Poland has not released their names or photos yet. So I'm not sure if maybe this person assumed that was the guy that did it. But, we'll have to wait and see, I guess.
We'll have to wait and see, but it appears that he may, at the moment, according to the hearsay, he may have actually been involved in putting out the stickers. Who knows? Maybe he's a part of an entire network, or maybe he's just some weirdo working alone with a fanny pack at the river. Who the hell goes to the river with a fanny pack, though? Think about that.
Yeah, that makes him sus right off the bat.
Aw, man, he's sus. Don't pull up Romania. But anyways, moving on from that, we also saw something else pretty wild today as well. Poland held the largest military parade that they have ever had in their nation's history by the number of soldiers involved and vehicles involved. According to the caption by Nexta, this parade involved 200 vehicles. That's a lot more than the Russian Victory Day parade even had this year, from what I could count. 92 airplanes. That is way more than the Russian Air Force showed at the Victory Day parade this year, because the Air Force wasn't even at the Victory Parade this year. They just removed that segment entirely. There was also Abrams, K2s, those including the vehicle figure, HIMARS, Patriots, the Bayraktars, and the Borsuks. But all in all, it was a pretty impressive military parade. We have some very cinematic clips showing this. I think we can keep that unmuted, because I'm pretty sure they haven't copyrighted that. When we see in slow-mo the Polish military.
Oh, they're allowed to have facial hair?
Yeah, yeah, a lot of militaries in the world allow facial hair.
That's wild. That's kind of cool. Look at those nice ARs of some sort.
Yeah, they look really good. I gotta say, their AKs look kind of weird. I don't know what it is, but for some reason I don't know. I'm not really a big fan of the look of their AK, but it still works. We're going to be skipping forward just a little bit because this is, of course, the kind of infantry part of the clip. We can then see some of the police vehicles of the Polish police and also paramilitary forces, kind of the National Guard in a way.
Man, they didn't focus in on the vehicles. They focused on the back of those folks' heads.
I know. It's like, why? See some more Polish APCs and supply trucks.
Dotyczących pozyskania 96 śmigłowców uderzeniowych Apache, a ze względu na współpracę...
Skipping forward past this part, this is the part I find cool. It's American. It's an American section of the parade because, of course, American forces are in Poland. It's a NATO member, and we base our forces inside of Poland. So in the parade were some M1A2s and Bradleys. It was pretty cool.
W przyszłym roku będziemy mieć na wyposażeniu Wojska Polskiego pierwsze egzemplarze Apache. Tym razem
And there goes an American M1A2.
z zasobów US Army,
Pretty nice.
wojsk lądowych
There's some
Stanów
Bradleys.
Zjednoczonych. A właśnie
Pretty nice.
Abramsy amerykańskie z załogami amerykańskimi, ale też polskie Abramsy za chwilę się pojawią.
And a Gepard passing by. Of course, a solid anti-air system.
Gotta love the Gepard.
You gotta love the Gepard. The Gepard is really cool.
That's a massive vehicle coming up. What's that?
I've got to be honest with you. I'm kind of in between it being a Crab and a Panzerhaubitze 2000, but I can't really tell. I don't think it's either of them, actually.
Looks German.
It does look German, but I don't know what that thing is. We see some Leopard 2 A6s.
Na tym nowoczesnym sprzęcie niemalże można powiedzieć, że niemalże z marszu, co też stanowi bardzo ważny przykład.
Gotta say, Leopard 2 A6s looks... Actually, those are Leopard 2 A5s. Looks sick.
Wśród zaproszonych gości wiem, że będą przedstawiciele 5. Korpusu US Army, a więc korpusu, którego wysunięty element na stałe, co bardzo mocno podkreślam, na stałe stacjonuje w Polsce.
But this was a little bit of a look at the parade that was held today in Warsaw. They didn't show all of it. Like, one thing I wish they kind of showed y'all was the homegrown version of the Polish Leopard, well, of the Leopard 2 in Poland, which is a Leopard 2 PL. They didn't really show that well in that video, so I have to pull it up for y'all. The Leopard 2 PL. And let me go to the images. This is the Polish homegrown version of the Leopard. It has its own kind of composite armor on the turret. It's completely different in some respects from the Leopard 2 A6s or the Leopard 2 A5s turret layout. Really cool. And these things just went into service about 2 years ago, 2 to 3 years ago in 2020. So really cool to see these at the parade. And it was showing some of Poland's best equipment that isn't currently at the border right now. And that parade was made to be as big as it is and also include as many NATO countries as it did to send a message to the Belarusians and the Russians that Poland, as far as anyone is concerned, will not play around and will not play games as far as it goes with the border situation. The Wagner can do all the drills they want, but once those drills turn into action, the Polish are going to be right there smacking them silly like they're some kind of a stepchild in some Brooklyn apartment. And so with that, we're going to be moving on from the military parade in Warsaw, and we're now going to be moving on into our location unknowns. But the live chat has been going crazy tonight, especially over a lot of stuff that has been happening over the course of the past 2 days, really. There's been a lot going on, and a lot of y'all have actually had questions about what we've been doing behind the scenes in regards to Lao School. And so we'll be getting to all of that here in a second. But Matthew, what have people been thinking and largely talking about with the major news of the night?
All right, and with that being said, let's go ahead and jump right into our first poll of the night. And it says NATO suggests that Ukraine can get NATO membership by giving up territory to Russia. And what are your thoughts? 85% said absolutely not. 9% said it's worth consideration. 4% said unsure. And 2% said Ukraine should do that. And to be honest with you, I'm totally shocked that anyone in NATO would ever suggest that, because Ukraine has shed a lot of blood to protect their territory. And now, after they're knee deep in the fight, why would they give up land to Russia just to get NATO membership? That would make no sense to me whatsoever. And, honestly, shame on the guy for even saying that, because that kind of spits in the face of Ukraine while they're trying to fight a very brutal war against the Russians, which are hunkered down in their defensive positions right now. So I'm definitely in disagreement with that suggestion. But Enforcer, what say you?
There is no way in hell that the Ukrainians should give up any territory. Not only does it betray their own national strategic interests, it betrays Western strategic interests for them to give up Crimea. That would make no sense whatsoever. Not just on their own perspective. Their troops have been fighting and dying to defend their homeland and to liberate their own homes. A lot of these Ukrainian soldiers have family and homes that they lived in while that massive voice crack happened, that are behind the lines.
That was
right
intentional?
now. No, that was unintentional completely.
Oh.
That was the worst voice crack. But their own homes are behind the front lines right now in occupied areas. They're not just fighting for the nation as an abstract idea. They're fighting for their own people, their families, their friends that are in the occupied territories. That's what they're fighting for. And I think it would be a huge spit in the face for them to have come this far in the war, to have done so much, and to have shown the world how weak the Russians are against a largely competent fighting force, to sit there and just give up and just give away the country. And the Russians came out today and they made a statement. Well, actually, Dmitry Medvedev did on Telegram, so take that for what you will. But he said the only way that we would allow Ukraine to end this war and then go join NATO is if they gave Russia everything east of the Dnipro River, including half of Kyiv. So everything.
Yeah, that sounds like something Medvedev would say.
Yeah, and then their capital, according to Medvedev, would be moved to Lviv. And then he said, that wouldn't happen anyways, because then the Polish would just annex the rest of Ukraine, like that happens in the modern world. It was insane, but nevertheless, they should not give up a thing. They should not give up an inch. If anyone's going to give up anything at this point in the war, it's going to be the Russians giving up their military and giving up reparations to Ukraine for the damages that they have received because of Russian aggression in this war. That is the only way that this thing can end, in my opinion. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next poll says, yesterday a Russian naval mine exploded on Romania's coast, destroying a resort pier. And what are your thoughts? 43% said no war act, but civilians are at risk. 32% said that's an act of war. 13% said unsure, and 13% also said it's unfortunate, but whatever. I would have to say that it is definitely not an act of war, in my opinion. The mines were just floating around the Black Sea. From all appearances, it looks like it was a Russian mine. However, there still is the possibility it could be a Ukrainian mine, but it's a remote possibility. But I would say that the big thing is here that the civilians are at risk because it hit right on the coast, it destroyed a pier, and of course, there was a risk that someone could have gotten injured. So, not good to see. And also, apparently, the mines are just free floating around the Black Sea, which is also very concerning. But Enforcer, what say you?
Sadly, there's really nothing one can do against the rogue mines. If they lose their tethers and they just go floating off, nobody's really responsible for them anymore. They just kind of get to do whatever they want. And if they hit something, everyone just goes, oh, well, that's unfortunate. Because the Russians planted them in a specific minefield. If they somehow got their tethers severed and they just start floating around, the Russians really can't be responsible for them anymore. Just because that's kind of the way it works. That's kind of why you don't see every single time a bomb is found in France, for example, or Britain, left over from World War II, you don't see the British going up to the Germans and saying, hey, we demand some kind of compensation for the bomb y'all dropped, 70 years ago. Even if it was just a couple of months ago, you really can't do anything about it. So while it's concerning, and it most certainly is a Russian mine, although could possibly, low chance, be a Ukrainian one, I don't really think there's much that can be gotten out of that, or much that could come out of it. because those kinds of things with the floating mines, the rogue mines, are accidental. Now, if you could prove that the mine was actually being controlled by the Russians and was somehow navigating its way to go hit something, that's a whole different story. But considering that it's just kind of floated into something and then blew up, can't really do anything about that, unfortunately. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion, and from what I understand historically, and also precedent-wise going through First and Second World Wars and all of the explosives left over after that, it doesn't really apply the way one would think. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And I saw Sarah A say in the live chat, if only one would drift into a ship from the Black Sea Fleet. I would not be shocked if that happens sometime in the future, because if they're untethered, like the enforcer said, they're free to flow wherever they want. So the Russians not knowing where the mines are themselves, it would be ironic if they got hit by their own mine and blew up the ship. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if that happened.
Dude, imagine the Vasily Baikov. Set a course, bearing 221. That will skirt right around the minefield. Hey, Captain. Blitz! You drove us into the minefield! Dude, they would start killing, like, the helmsman, man. They would, like, slaughter that guy. And the poor dude wouldn't even know that it was just a rogue mine that was untethered and floating through. But that would be hilarious, wouldn't it? If they were, like, skirting around a minefield and one of the untethered mines ended up colliding with the ship. That would be
that would be a shame if one of those mines just accidentally floated right in front of one of those ships, you know, just right at the exact moment, right at the exact area. That'd be a shame.
Gee, that would be a real shame, Matthew, if the Ukrainians could somehow find where the minefields are and then put semi-submersible drones inside of the minefield so that way they kind of blend in. And then when the Russians pass by, they turn it on and ram it into a Russian ship. That would be a little unfortunate.
I want the Russians looking through binoculars on their ship out into the sea, and they see a mine coming at them at like 100 miles an hour. Oh, bliat, is that moving with the sea, or is that motorized? Like, put some like fins or something, or propellers on the back of it, and have it driving straight toward their ship.
Dude, you know what would be even funnier? That Russian guy would probably sit there with the binoculars and look at it, and another guy would come up, hey, what are you looking at? And nothing, I think I have a hangover from last night. It's fine. That's it, he just watched the thing run.
Why is it mine moving at 50 miles per hour, bliat?
Hey, do you see that spray of mist out there? No, it's just a hangover, man. I'll get over it. You can go to your duties or whatever. But it's getting closer. Nah, it's nothing, man. I swear, it's nothing. Don't report me to the captain. He's going to have me, like, keel-hauled under the ship. But anyways, with that, I hope we addressed that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and moving on to our last poll, it says Poland says it arrested 2 Russians for distributing Wagner propaganda in their country. And what are your thoughts? 56% said good, Poland has it under control. 27% said good, but somewhat concerning. 12% said not good, Poland is compromised. And 4% said unsure. And as we reported the other day on our war summary video, it is good to hear that they got these 2 Russians arrested. However, that does tell us that Poland has been compromised, because these 2 guys were apparently Russian. They weren't Polish trolls. So it appears that some people have infiltrated into Poland that have some bad intent. And that's not good to see, obviously. But it looks like Poland is tracking them down. And I wish we had the names and an official press release from Poland to know exactly who those folks were, because I'm still skeptical about the crime being pinned on those 2 guys that are in the photos, because we really don't have any corroborating evidence to back that up. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that it's good to hear that they have it under control, because every country is compromised, off of that premise. There are Russian spies and Russian saboteurs in every single country in the world, including China, and we also do the same thing. The thing is, though, is that the U.S. intelligence agencies usually do their job so well, nobody ever really gets caught. So it makes it seem like we don't have people around the world, when in fact they're everywhere. And that's something that I think is always funny, because everyone's always talking about, oh, the FSB is so competent, they're so well put together, they just run circles around the CIA. But you never hear about CIA agents getting arrested in foreign countries and found out, but you hear about FSB agents getting arrested pretty regularly, as an interesting thing. There have been, as the last count reported around 3 months ago, 15 spies arrested in the Donetsk area alone, inside of Poland, trying to survey and return information back to Russia about NATO naval activities at the port. 15 of them just in that one city. And that shows they suck at their job. They're all over Poland, of course. They're all over the Baltics. They're everywhere. But we also have an equal number inside of Belarus and Russia. And not only that, it doesn't really compromise them. They have the situation under control. Most of them aren't really getting to do anything. And anyways, these guys, as far as agents go and gathering information, hell, they probably didn't even gather any information. They just went around posting stickers up and then got arrested. So they didn't even end up achieving anything. And as Barry Woodward said, call them out. They suck. I mean, the FSB just sucks. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. They're not as good as people make them out to be. Look at the Russian army and then explain to me why the FSB would be so much better and more competent than the Russian army would be. That's the incompetence in Russia is an across the board thing. You can see it in the bureaucracy of just the normal Russian government operating, and the Russian army and the Russian Air Force, in the FSB. You don't get to see it as much in the FSB because they try and keep stuff classified there, but I guarantee you the FSB is in shambles and poorly run. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are now on into the questions.
All right, so hopping into our first Super Chat question, we have a very generous donation from Scott Mincing. He puts in a $50 donation, and thank you very much, Scott, for that very generous support. And he says, can't always donate, but we wanted to show our appreciation for the fine work y'all do, and we always support the fundraiser, and keep up the good work, and with your studies.
And thank you so much for the support, Scott. And speaking of studies, I actually did like an okay amount of reading before I got on stream today. I went to school, came back, made a video, and then I read everything, and then I started working on this. So it's been a really busy day. I've been up since 6 o'clock in the morning, and I'm still going strong. But moving on from that, and someone's about to say, just 6 o'clock in the morning. Well, yeah, you go and try and go to sleep at like 2 in the morning or something.
Nah,
here.
Man, nobody's gonna say that. Nobody's gonna say
no,
that. Except for maybe doctors, they might say that.
Dude, someone is seriously about to say, I know it. Oh, you wake up at 6, that's nothing. I get 1 hour of sleep. There's gonna be someone out there that says that. But anyways, I gotta say, Scott, supporting us and helping us to keep this thing going is wonderful, but I think that you certainly have your priorities in the right area by supporting the fundraisers first and then supporting this channel second. Of course, we have to keep the channel running, and support is very important when it comes to that. It's really the only way we can run the channel. Otherwise, there really is no other way. But the support to Ukraine is far more important, because while we do this as a job, there are people in Ukraine who do it as a job to defend their country and put their lives on the line each and every day. And so for fundraisers like Revive Soldiers of Ukraine, I think it's way more important that people prioritize that over really anything else that they could put their money into or support during this war, whether it be our channel or that. I say it's the best thing to always pick that over this channel. And so thank you so much once again for always supporting the fundraiser, Scott. We always notice you. And I got to thank y'all all so much once again for always keeping an eye and a heart out for all the folks in Ukraine that need that kind of help and that support. And thank you so much for supporting this channel tonight, and also saying that you appreciate our work, because it means a lot to us that folks do. And so thank you so much once again, Scott. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Zyper Sniper 1, longtime channel legend as well, who puts in a $20 donation, and thank you very much, Zyper Sniper, for that support. And also, welcome back once again. And they said, when Ukraine takes back Crimea, will we see Ukraine permanently destroy the Kerch Bridge?
Yes, that is a guarantee, because the Kerch Bridge was illegally built by the Russians. They annexed Crimea in 2014, and then they built the bridge. The Ukrainians have protested the existence of the bridge since it was in its drawing phase. They said it was an illegal bridge because it's something that is being built onto Ukrainian sovereign territory without Ukrainian permission. And so the bridge would immediately be demolished. The Russian side would probably, the Russian side as in this part right here, that is really just a little jut into the sea on like a wave breaker, that would still exist, but the rest of it, including the bridge on the Tuzla Island and the bridge actually heading into Kerch, that would all be leveled by the Ukrainians. It's an illegal bridge, and so in their standpoint, they probably wouldn't allow it to exist unless, and I would say this may be the only exception, unless there was a government change in Russia. If we saw that the government in Russia was overthrown and replaced with one that was far more favorable to the West than anything, we would probably see that this bridge would still exist, because the Ukrainians would probably start to resume business dealings with the Russians a few years after the war, especially if there was a radical government change where Russia is no longer like it has been. But the chances of that, in my opinion, happening or low, very low. So it will most likely be more likely that the bridge will be completely destroyed on the Ukrainian side of the Kerch Strait, and the Russian side would probably still stand because they wouldn't want to spend the funds on trying to demolish something that could just stand there and rot instead. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, Cyber Sniper. It's great to have you back. And I got to thank you so much for supporting this channel and helping us to keep it running and asking a really good question. That was actually a great one, and it was one that we've never answered before. But with that, we are on to the last one. And thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running.
Yes, indeed. And real quick before we get on to the last one, big shout out to a BC Skyman who put in a $20 donation as well and did not leave a comment, but he did leave a super sticker of the YouTube cat wearing samurai gear or something like that.
Did you just call a Shiba Inu a cat?
Is that a Shiba Inu?
That's a Shiba Inu, man. That's the
I'm seeing double here. I see two of them. I'm trying to decipher which one's which. Also, it's waving a #1 flag as well. So thank you very much, BC. I love the super sticker. And Enforcer, what say you?
I love the super sticker. It's super sicker.
Super sicker.
Dude, that's like some 1980s movie, like a spinoff of RoboCop. Super sicker. But anyways, thank you so much for the support, BC, and thank you for putting in the Samurai Doge with the #1 flag. And I gotta thank you so much once again, BC, for helping this channel to keep on running, for being an old guard of the Lee Spring Army, and of course, being here every single night. I can't really think of nights that you miss, unless if it's a hunting trip. Hunting trips are excusable, but beyond that, you never miss a day watching this channel. And I gotta thank you so much for being here with us tonight. But with that, I hope we addressed that fairly well, and I think we're on to the last actual question of the segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the location unknowns, the rest of the frontline news, and a little bit of Russian border news.
Yeah, this one goes to Drunky Monkey, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Drunky Monkey, for that support. And he said, Herom Slava, LSA, and take a live chat, please.
And Slava Ukraini, Herom Slava, and long live the LSA. And thank you so much for the support, Drunky Monkey, and we will make sure to take a live chat. But thank you for being here with us tonight, and thank you for supporting this channel to help us to keep it running. And with that, what do we got in the live chat?
And this one goes to Packetang, who says, why wouldn't Ukraine take the bridge for themselves as a war reparation? And the bridge could be controlled and maybe a good trade resource.
It may be a good trade resource, but if the Russian government does not change going into the future and it remains a Putin-controlled regime, we'll probably see that trade never resumes with the Russians, and the Ukrainians instead completely restructure their trade market and economics to a Western pattern more so than a Russian one. And so we'll probably see that they don't really trade with the Russians again unless there was a government change, and so they would most likely destroy the bridge. You also have to remember that this bridge, as far as what this bridge to the Ukrainians is like the Reich Chancellery building was to the Allies in the Second World War. It's an abomination against Ukraine itself, like the Reich Chancellery was an abomination to the Allies. And the Reich Chancellery ended up being destroyed by the Allies at the end of the war, just bulldozed. And then this will also be destroyed as well, because it's a symbol of the Russians trying to dominate their country, regardless whether it's a good trade route or not. I'm not going to disagree. It would be an amazing trade route. This is going to simplify things crossing the Kerch Strait. But it's still a bridge built by the Russians illegally, and it was built under Putin's government. And so it holds a very negative connotation, even if it is something that may end up being beneficial in the future. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Really good point, though. And thank you so much once again, Drunky Monkey, for sponsoring that live chat and helping this channel to keep on running. With that, we're now going to be moving into our location unknown, starting off with our first bit, where we saw a Ukrainian soldier exercising with no exercising equipment. So some of y'all may ask, how do they do a bench press? And they do it with Chad music and a dude. Look. Heave. That's pretty impressive. What I have to say is more impressive is that this guy is able to stay so rigid while this guy is trying to lift him like a weight.
They're both like feats of like human like capability at this point. That one guy planking, he is like, man,
he's a superhuman athlete, like on Impractical Jokers. You remember that episode? Oh my god, he almost killed him though at the end.
Good way to break those legs off.
Oh my lord, dude! Not only is this bench pressing, this is paratrooper training right here. Quick, land, boom! But with that, that's
Your
it.
injury was not service related, is what they'll later tell them.
Yeah, that's exactly what they're going to say. Your knee injuries are not service related. Did you see the video, man? That's what he's going to be saying at the Ukrainian VA. But anyways, moving on from that and into the next clip, we also saw a Russian BMP-1 get leveled. Or get bent, whatever you want to call it. It got destroyed. So here's the BMP. We can see it having a really tough time negotiating the road. Therefore, it must be Tony. And we can see that it was abandoned, and now the drones come back after it was abandoned, and is now dropping bomblets on it, one after the other, and one went to the turret, but it doesn't appear to have actually caused any real damage. And we can see that it took them about 10 or more bomblets, but they're finally getting somewhere. What the hell is no ammo in the BMP? Like, it hasn't blown up. There's been rounds that have gone straight through the... Oh, now it's finally on fire. Oh, smoke ring. Look at that, Matthew. It vapes. Poof.
Look at that.
Look at that. Dude, it's like some middle schooler with the blueberry flavored vape, man. It's going to town.
Huffing.
Man, that thing is chuffing. Your typical Russian chain smoker bullet. But anyways, that's the end of the clip. And great to see another BMP destroyed. And it wasn't the only one of the day, as the Russian casualty report will show. Oh!
Oh, wow. They got 3.
Man.
Oh, yes.
3.
I'm telling you.
Oh, man, I'm telling you. And look at this, man. It's all bullshit. Read all about it. Man, only 540? Dude, who the hell is this?
What's an
guy?
ant know?
Oh, man.
It's an ant.
Uh-oh, dude. This ant knows a little too much. They need to put this thing
That's
back
a
in the
fire
car.
ant. A piss ant.
Dude. Hey, I like that. That was a good one. But where are the memes? Let's see. Where are the Bobcat Skid Steer memes? Hey, KJ, 3 for Matt. Hey, 3 for Matt. Hey, from Newt.
Hey, look, it's the
Margaret.
actual
Hey,
Bobcat.
3 for Matt.
Let's
Melissa.
go.
Hey, let's go. Edward. Hey, 3 for Matt. Hey, Adam L. Fox, 3 for Matt. Hey, 540 for Andrew. Hey, very nice, very nice. My Locast, 3 for Matt. Hey, and let's see, 3 for Matt. What the hell is that? Is that a wagon? Oh no, that's a grill.
That looks like some kind of what is that?
It's a smoker.
A smoker.
It's a grill
on wheels.
it's not a smoker. It's a grill, but it's smoking the meats, man. And you know what comes with smoking the meats?
Man, that's Zuck.
Dude, Zuck is bringing the sweet baby rays, man. You thought I was going to say something else there, didn't you?
Which one's the coward? Is it Zuck or Elon? Which one is it? Who copped out? Who didn't fight?
Whoa, hey, whoa. That's nearly political at this point, man. Watch out, man. We're gonna have
I
people
was wanting to see
each other.
the nerd battle of the century here. I was putting my money on Zuck.
Man, honestly, they kind of both backed out at the same time. They both went, man, if my mother was here, they both did that at like nearly the same time. But anyways.
But Elon said, I need surgery. And Zuck said, I'm not going to the Colosseum in Italy because I'm allergic.
Allergic to what? Romans? Like,
I made that up. I don't know.
I thought I'd be like, what the hell does he mean? But anyways, hey, 3 for Matt from Space News, who does talk about stuff at the Starbase, which is really neat. Let's see here. Glenn, hey, 3 for Matt. Let's see. Hey, Ico Rich, put in 3 for Matt. Hey, dude, the memes are insane today. Like, there was a million of them. But 3 Bobcat Skidsters were destroyed, but more importantly, 540 Russian infantry were knocked out. A fairly average number, but the numbers in every other category were significant today. 16 armored personnel carriers. That's about 4 above the average in the war. 22 supply trucks. 7 tanks. 29 artillery pieces. The Ukrainian counter battery has been overperforming today, doing amazing. 29 drones. 8 cruise missiles were shot down. And 3 anti-aircraft warfare systems were also knocked out as well. All in all, it was a really good day today for the Ukrainian army. And when we look at the front lines, you can see why. And so we're going to be moving there immediately. But before we do, we have to move to the Russian border area, where we saw that a recon boom was destroyed today by a little Ukrainian drone. We can see the recon tower right there. We can now see the little Ukrainian drone coming in, and it will do it. It will do the Lord's work. And there it goes right into the camera.
That's some good driving.
Oh my god, there went the camera. Dude, the camera did a backflip. Look at this. Bing! There you go, straight to the sky. But that little long-range recon camera is gone. So with that,
Bing shaling.
Bing chilling. But anyways, we're going to be moving on from that area of the front line and into the area of Kuzmivka, where we saw something neat. It's the first STRV-122 to be spotted on the front lines. This is the Swedish version of the Leopard 2A5, and I gotta say, that camo net on it makes it look so cool. That's a really cool looking version of the Leopard.
That is pretty cool, I gotta admit.
Man, dude,
It's a huge tank.
Dude, this thing is so big, it looks like a freaking locomotive for a train, man. This thing is massive.
Or that guy's really small, one or the other. There's no, wait a minute, hold on. Something isn't looking right about this photo. Like, why is the stuff, like, the tarps on the ground so, like, large looking, but they look small at the same time?
I don't know. Good question. I mean, that guy does kind of look small, but...
Yeah, something looks weird about this.
I don't know. Maybe he's just small. I don't know. Oh, man, I'm telling you.
What's going on here?
Oh, man, I'm telling you. But he's a little small guy, but still. The first STRV-122 on the lines, from what we can tell. Moving on from that area and all the way down into Bakhmut, because, you know, the northeastern front, it is what it is. Not really a lot to cover there. But moving on down into the Bakhmut front, we saw something fairly interesting over the past 48 hours. The Russians attempted to counterattack the area, and they failed. And when I mean they failed, here's what they failed like. I'll show y'all. Proof. Because we're not into just running our mouths or yapping our gums on this channel, although we do love to hear ourselves talk. We're into showing videos. With Chad music. But these are all of the Russian vehicles that were lost in the failed counterattack against Andriivka and Klishkivka. The Russians actually tried to push the Ukrainians back with one quick, really fast push. No logistics involved or anything. They just got the tanks set to go, and they tried. But we can see a destroyed BMP-2. We can see a destroyed T-90M, an MTLB, a T-80 BVM.
A little rusty.
Little rusty? Hey, a little rusty there, aren't you, fella? But anyways.
Kind of like their whole military.
Yeah, kind of like their whole military bullet. And I don't really know what that one is because I can't really tell. It looks like another T-90M. And then you can see Andriivka over here and the railroad tracks. Well, how did they do? They did terribly. They didn't even make it to their objective. They all got destroyed out there in the field, and that was the end of it. The counteroffensive, as far as the Russians were concerned, didn't go anywhere. Meanwhile, in Klishkivka, we also saw more destroyed Russian vehicles from this counteroffensive. These actually made it a little bit closer to the village of Klishkivka, but they still didn't succeed. We can see a BMD-2 right there.
Андрюх, а ну улыбнись. Вот ты наш проводничок такой маленький. Колобочек. Вот. А позавчера наша работала. Тварюка потом.
And then we can see another APC out there that was destroyed, but I can't tell what it is because the Massey Ferguson tractor was like distracting me for a minute. So unfortunately, I can't tell what that is. But nevertheless, two other Russian APCs that were destroyed in the failed counteroffensive around 2 days ago. Those were filmed today, however. And moving well behind the lines, we can see that the 93rd, the famous fighting 93rd, that many of y'all have known from the major battles that have occurred in the northeastern area of Ukraine, they appear to be sharpening their blades, so to speak, as they brought some of their tanks back to a repair yard for repairs. This is a T-64BM, or a BV, and we can see that they're replacing the tracks on it, getting rid of the old links, putting on new ones, and probably giving this thing largely a service check as far as tanks go, making sure that it's operational, making sure that none of the parts are about to break down, and if they are, make sure to replace them before this thing goes back up to the front. But still, really nice to see that the 93rd Brigade has its logistics set up so that way these tanks can be maintained, so that way they're not breaking down as frequently, and they also don't put their crew members into bad fixes when they do. Like, for example, if the tank was to break down in the middle of the front line. That's a little bit of a problem. So it's great to see that they're taking care of that before it even becomes a problem. Moving on from that little picture and on into the northern front in Bakhmut, we also saw near Merkivka, Berkivka actually, that the Ukrainians were able to destroy a UR-77 meteorite. So here's the clip. Oh, oh,
Dang.
I'm blinded. I'm blinded by the freaking light.
Damn, son, where'd they find that?
Damn, son, where'd you find this? Look at that. It's like nuclear.
Jeez.
And the reason why it's nuclear is because that giant white coil down there is it's the anti-mine charge. You know, the thing that you see in the field that they lay out and they blow it up and it's massive. That whole thing just blew up on top of the meteorite. That's what it looks like. And so the meteorite's gone. I'm sure that once the smoke cleared, there's not even wheels left of the meteorite.
The Ukrainians always have to back that drone up so fast because they're always like in the middle of the blast zone.
Yeah, dude, it's like a B-29 dropping an atomic bomb. The thing's almost rattled to pieces. But we see them looking at.
They're even showing us the mushroom cloud here.
Look at that, dude. I feel like we're watching the movie. Oh my god, it's gone. It really is gone. There's nothing left.
Dang, that was effective.
So there was the meteorite. That's where it was at the beginning of the video. There's some pieces of it, but that thing is gone completely. Good lord. Dude, Oppenheimer's got nothing on this. I mean, this right here is an explosion. But with that,
man, where's Michael Bay when you need him?
Man, where
who's the goose? Who made Oppenheimer again?
Who's the goose?
Whoa.
Whoa, what happened? Let's see. What was the guy's name? I can't remember.
I was in the foothills.
It wasn't
Christopher Nolan. That was it.
Oh yeah. It wasn't J.J. Abrams though, because J.J. Abrams would have thrown in at least one lens flare, and I didn't hear about that, so it wasn't J.J. Abrams. But anyways, moving on from that and out of the Bakhmut front, things have been going well there. But meanwhile, a little bit further south near Pervomaiske, which kind of sounds like James May telling that guy in that Japanese tour video, I don't know, it feels kind of pervy. I don't know why in the world I'm always reminded that of Pervomaiske. But anyways, we saw that Russian forces were hit pretty heavily in this area. Here's the clip, with Shad music included. But there's Russians up there down the street. We can see one of their knocked out APCs and the crew is trying to get out. And we can see their other APC backing up down the street. And it appears that the other APC right here just got peppered by an AGS-17, which gave the crew a little bit of a fright, so some of them fainted. But still, pretty nice to see that the Ukrainians are, of course, holding off Russian forces in Pervomaiske and continuing to inflict a little bit of damage onto them. That wasn't the only thing that got damage inflicted on it today in the southern front. A Russian colonel got killed. Hey, that's kind of a big deal. According to a Russian telegram, August 14th, 2023, as a result of an airstrike of the armed forces of Ukraine with missiles of the Storm Shadow type in the Urevka village, our dear friend, Colonel Kovalev, Viktor Anatolievich, died in the Mangush region of the DPR. A man of his word, a true officer and professional. You will always remain in our hearts, but not in our pay books. Your work will continue. Victory will be ours. Very sad. Oh man, I'm crying. Oh man, I'm telling you. But another Russian colonel knocked out, meaning there will be some promotions and there will also be a lot less efficiency in the unit that was counting on him to kind of run things. We're now going to be moving out of the Donetsk area and past the southern front, since we already covered that earlier, because we got to get to some fun stuff. We've got to get to Odessa. Y'all thought I was about to go to Kherson? No, we're going to Odessa, because we got to see a Gepard in action that was able to shoot down an incoming Russian air target. Check it out. Or as Bald and Bankrupt would say, check it out. You see it firing into the distance. And you can't see what it's firing at. You can only hear the loud whine in your ears of the engine. But in a second, you'll see what it's firing at. Right there.
Oh.
Man, and that guy was going off at the end of the video, dude. He said, Mom, get the camera! Dude, someone in
Man,
there...
he's kind of giving me those Schultz vibes when he was at that, like, rally out there.
Man, well, he isn't a Gepard, man. The spirit kind of overtakes you. You know, you blow up a drone, you go, Geschnick, man, like, man, you know, and then it's a whole thing. But, dude, you know, some guy in his house in Odessa didn't have the blinds closed, and so when this happened, he looked over and he said, morning already? He's like, what the... But anyways, that's the end of the clip.
Don't you noble?
Oh, did it happen at the ZMPP? Just like, it's like, this is not good. But anyways, Great to see the Gepard hitting its target, and of course, amazing work from the Ukrainian air defenses in that area, making sure to keep the skies and of course the city safe from Russian attacks. Moving on into the area of the Kinburn Spit, had to remember the name of that for a moment. We also saw that the Ukrainians were destroying a Russian boat, because you can buy them a boat, but you can also destroy them a boat. Dude, that wolf looks a little sly though in their division emblem. Like, that thing looks...
Is that even a wolf, though? It looks like something worse than a wolf.
Oh, no, it's a wolf. That thing's a wolf with 3 belts around its waist. That thing's got 3 Gucci belts.
It's the world heavyweight champion. Look at that thing go.
Dude, it's the wolf heavyweight champion. But dude, this thing be coming up there, and you'd be going, so what's your speech before the fight? And it just goes, like corn or something. But anyways, you can see the drone coming in on the boat. And it's coming on in. The Russian boat's trying to leave the area, but the FPV drone is trying to make sure that that doesn't happen. It'll end up succeeding.
Man, from here it looks like they're just out like for a nice day on the lake.
Yeah, boating on Lake Martin. That's a lake in Alabama, by the way, if y'all don't know. But you see the boat trying to flip a 180 to throw the drone off, but I think they forget that the drone can turn on a dime, so this isn't really saving them, it's just prolonging the inevitable. Well, it didn't even really do that, did it? It just
they missed.
Wait a minute, did they?
Yeah, they definitely missed. That's why they cut it so early.
You know what? I think they... Well, I don't know. It looks like, if anything, it would graze the boat's side. But it doesn't look like it went in the boat.
They would have showed the explosion if they hadn't missed it.
Yeah, I think they may have actually missed that one, but it was a close call. That thing certainly skimmed the hull of the boat going into the water. But anyways... They
probably got seared or singed or one or the other.
Man, you know what they got? They got splashed like it was Splash Mountain or something. They said, I went off this freaking ride. Get me off. And then the commissar went, what was that? And starts pulling out his pistol. Nothing. I don't want off the ride. I'm okay. But anyways... With that, that's the end of that clip. Great to see. And we're now going to be moving on into the actual meaningful news in Kherson. The Ukrainians are slaughtering at Kherson Lahari. There's no doubt about it at this point. They have a strong foothold here, and the Russians aren't able to uproot them or push them out at this point. It appears that the Ukrainians are also trying to build, according to public Ukrainian armed forces statements, a bridgehead to Kherson Lahari, so that way forces can be expanded upon in this area and used for further offensives in the Kherson direction. It's not really like that even matters. It's not like the Russians are going to bring reinforcements in this area, because they don't even have any anymore. So what they have in this area is what they got, and they're going to have to work with it. But we did see that they're losing what they have to work with, as a large group of Russian infantry were targeted and destroyed right on the outskirts of Kherson Lahari today. We can see the massive cackle of Russian soldiers moving without purpose, and we can now see that the artillery is coming in with purpose and giving the Russians no ability to have any purpose, because now they are becoming fertilizer. We can see the Russians running into a building. Well, I mean, you know, I guess it is the purpose. I'm trying to make this all work, man. You're impromptu. But we can see the artillery landing on the building where the Russians are hiding. And now we can see the building is on fire. We can see one of the Russians making a break for it. And when you see him still making a break for it, and actually it's a BTR. It's not just one Russian, it's probably a couple of them. But with that, that's the end of the clip, and great to see that they were able to decimate Russian forces outside of Kherson Lahari. They also were able to destroy some Russian artillery as well, some of the few that's in the area. Alright, copyrighted music, always love to hear it. And we can see the D-20 that you just highlighted going up in a puff of smoke, as they hit it directly and took it on out. Oh man, I'm telling you. Have you ever wanted to see a Russian D-20 artillery piece blow itself up to sky high? Well, then you, my friend, are in luck. Introducing the all-new smoking D-20. It's like the smoking gun, but without the courtroom. And so with that, that's the end of the clip. And great to see the 406th Artillery Brigade was able to knock out another Russian artillery piece. Meanwhile, in the direction of Oleski, we also saw that the 501st Marine Brigade was able to knock out a Russian BMP-2 in this direction. Alright, that's an interesting song. just a small fling. It's like, okay, cool, thank you. But anyways,
I thought you said something foul at first. I was trying to decipher in my head what I heard.
man, oh man, I'm telling you.
Oh man, I'm telling you.
We see the FPV drone coming on in, and oh, dude, oh man, right through the roof. And there it goes, out of control. Oh my god. Dude, that thing planted into the ditch. Did you see the guy who was riding on the front of that BMP? He got launched. Look at that. Watch, it zooms in. And he, oh no.
Jeez, where's the other guys running off from?
I don't even know. And then it's getting clustered. Dude, man, they did them dirty. I mean, the ammunition's going off in there. Pretty interestingly, though, it's like coming out of the bottom of the vehicle. And we can see them continuing to watch the roaring flame, and then we can see the normal card that they throw up at the end of every single one of these videos. Like, amazing to see the kind of hit that they got. I thought it was actually going to miss, but it hit it dead on, sent the thing up in flames, and they also launched someone off the front of the vehicle. I mean, this right here is something that we actually learned about in torts. It's called liability through negligence. Look at it. Watch. Look. Is the driver negligent for having his vehicle hit and losing control? Matthew, what do you think?
Well, I mean, it is a war zone after all.
In a normal society, it would be expected. But anyway, that's the end of the clip. And it is great to see that the 501st Marine Battalion was able to knock out that BMP-2. With that, we're now going to be moving on out of that part of the front line and out of really all the front lines altogether. We're going to be moving to the Dnipro for a moment because while, of course, we always cover all of the great things that happened in Ukraine, usually there are almost nothing but great things that happen, according to video and picture evidence, every once in a while something a little unfortunate happens. And this is a kind of a higher up, more abstract war effort kind of event that happened, but still a little bit of an unfortunate one nevertheless. The Ukrainians have been producing their own homemade versions of missiles, for example, the Hram and the Grim. I believe it's the Frem and the Grom. I just got that wrong. But the Frem and the Grom, which are some short-range ballistic missiles that are produced in Ukraine. And they've also been producing other kinds of unguided rockets and missiles throughout the war. And of course, production has been ramped up as the war has continued and the demand has increased. One of the largest factories that we know of that produces unguided rockets and missiles was inside of the city of Dnipro. And it produced a decent amount of the rockets and missiles, but not all of them. We would assume it was somewhere around 15 to 17% of them all in the country, but that's still fairly significant when you're talking about percentages. Unfortunately, it appears that air defenses in the Dnipro city area overnight were overwhelmed, and 3 missiles out of the 4 we'll be seeing in the video ended up striking the unguided rocket and missile factory, most likely heavily damaging it to the point that it has been knocked out, and then a 4th missile hit in an unknown location near the factory but not on it. We hear the first Russian missile fly over, and when you see it explode directly near the factory smokestack on one part of the facility. A second one then quickly flies in after that. And then it hits to the far left side of the factory.
Goodness.
A third missile flies in, and then it hits almost in the area of the first missile, just a little bit off. But you know something interesting that this video is proving is that while it is showing that Ukrainian war infrastructure, a somewhat significant part of it, is getting knocked out, you know what else it's showing is that the Russians actually have the ability to aim these missiles precisely. So it really throws out of the window that Russian missiles may be inaccurate, because out of the 3 missiles that targeted this facility, all 3 of them ended up hitting. So that is clearly showing that most of the time, the Russians aren't just hitting civilian buildings out of accident, they're deliberately targeting those buildings with these missiles. But anyways, we're going to let the video continue. We see the 3rd explosion, and then the 4th missile that comes in, it hits somewhere in the general area. We don't even think anyone was injured by this 4th missile. It hit somewhere in an open area. But we see it explode right there. Apparently, from what I can understand, that was in some kind of a yard around the factory. It was near one of the buildings. It caused very light damage, but it didn't directly hit a building like the other 3 did. And someone asked, where was the air defense? That's a good question. I don't really know. Usually air defense is pretty proactive and is able to shoot down the majority of incoming air targets, missiles, and drones. But in this video, it appears that the air defense wasn't even active, and all of these missiles made it through. So, unfortunately, I don't really know how to explain that, but it does appear that there was a breach in the airspace or a lack of air defense around the city of Dnipro this night. But with that, that is the end of that clip. And unfortunate to see, it will most likely affect Ukrainian abilities, but not by a lot. It's mostly going to affect the Ukrainians' abilities to fire at the Kerch Bridge and into Russia, considering that only Ukrainian weapons can be used to attack the Kerch Bridge and Russia. Beyond that, they largely rely on Western-supplied weaponry at this point in the normal conducting of their war efforts inside of occupied territory, well, more so against Russians in occupied territory. But beyond that, it shouldn't have that much of an effect. At least on the actual frontline situation of the war. It'll have more so of an effect on the Ukrainians' ability to strike deep into Russia or at the Kerch Bridge. But with that, we're going to be moving on up to Kyiv to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky on day 538 of the war. And so, without further ado, here is the speech. Speech! And let me make sure it's not on the English track.
The train.
Дорогі українці, українки, всі наші воїни, сьогодні продовжую відвідувати наші бойові бригади. Вчора ми були на Донеччині, сьогодні різні райони Запорізької області, територія роботи ОСУ в Таврі. Разом з генералом Тарнавським були в розташуваннях 3-ї та 15-ї бригад оперативного призначення Нацгвардії, 47-ї та 65-ї окремих механізованих бригад, 46-ї аеромобільної бригади, 10-й армійський корпус, 116-та, 117-та і 118-та бригади, і кожна особлива, всі молодці. Відвідав передове хірургічне відділення, подякував нашим бойовим медикам за порятунок українських життів. Поспілкувався з комбригами, комбатами про потреби наших воїнів, те, що вони реально відчувають на передовій. Все, про що говорили хлопці, звучатиме на ставці. Коли таке спілкування бригада за бригадою і у всіх реальний бойовий досвід, то можна оцінити ситуацію значно глибше, побачити, як конкретний досвід одної бригади може бути застосований іншими підрозділами та масштабований на всі наші сили оборони. Зафіксували конкретні потреби, засоби РЕП, дрони, броньовані евакуаційні машини, медівак. Є додаткові організаційні питання, те, про що не говорилося вчора, зокрема щодо офіцерських звань, тренування воїнів, одне з ключових завдань. Говорили про це також. Реальний бойовий досвід, сучасні виклики та тенденції на полі бою, вогонь та маневр, майстерність, яка є у наших воїнів та яку треба поширювати на всі бригади, а також зробити це пріоритетом в учбових центрах, особливо під час навчання мобілізованих. Підготовка воїнів – це також відповідальність кожного командира всіх ланок. Важлива мотивація людей – це прямий наслідок того, як вчаться воювати. Почули від комбатів відгуки про бойове застосування техніки і зброї, яку надають партнери. Кожен такий відгук – це те, про що будемо говорити з лідерами. І хочу окремо подякувати усім нашим воїнам, які беруть трофеї, ставлять на службу Україні російську техніку. Це не просто раціональність наших хлопців, це і важливий доказ спроможності героїв наших забирати зброю ворога, використовувати для захисту життя України. Мав честь нагородити наших воїнів, солдатів, сержанти, офіцери. Пишаюсь кожним. Дякую, хлопці, за ваші шеврони. Дуже приємно. Окремо хочу сьогодні подякувати усім, хто допомагав з ліквідацією наслідків російських ракетних нальотів. Вчора в Одесі, Харківщина, сьогодні Львів, Луцьк, Дніпро, Краматорськ, на Черкащині, також Запорізькій області, в усіх частинах держави. Дякую рятувальникам, лікарям, поліцейським, волонтерам, місцевій владі. Дякую. Щодня маємо пам'ятати кроки вперед наших воїнів на передовій, наближають безпеку та захист для усіх наших міст і сіл. А чим більше сил у нашої ППО, тим більше можливостей тилових областей працювати для оборони. Вже збільшуємо, зокрема, військове виробництво, навіть в таких умовах, як зараз, і будемо збільшувати. Українська мета очевидна, ми переможемо та забезпечимо Україні силу, яка дозволить гарантувати надійний мир. І я дякую кожному нашому воїну, усім, хто б'ється заради України, усім волонтерам, які допомагають, кожному і кожній, всім українцям, українкам, які відчувають, що вони на війні, а отже, допомагають обороні. Дуже дякую. Слава Україні!
And
Heroam Slava.
And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky, and that is the end of the halftime show as well. That means that we're about to be moving on into the next segment of the stream. It's going to be a fun one. It's a fun time because we get to talk to every single one of y'all on a personal level. We get to cross the threshold, and we get to answer questions from the live chat, from the super chats, and from everywhere in between. So, with that in mind, Matthew, take it away.
All right, and with that being said, we're moving into our final poll segment and also question segment of the night. And our first poll says, Ukraine says it will not go to the Olympics next year if Russia participates, and is this appropriate? 79% said that is 100% appropriate. 10% said I disagree with that move. 8% said I'm somewhat neutral on this, and 4% said unsure. And on this one, I'd have to say that if Ukraine does not want to participate, I think the better move is simply not to go. In my opinion, when they sometimes go to these events and then they don't shake hands with the players and things like that, that's kind of bad sportsmanship. But I totally understand why they won't go if the Russians are there. That is perfectly understandable, and I would support that 100%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say I would support their decision 100%, especially considering that they are at war with the Russians. It wouldn't really, I don't even think sportsmanship can be achieved when you're at war with a country. It would be like expecting an American athlete in an Olympics game during the Second World War, which no Olympics happened during the Second World War. But let's say if one did, it would be like an American shaking a Nazi German athlete's hand during the Second World War. Would they have done that? Probably not. Should they have even been in the same place to even have to ask that question? Probably not either. And I'm also kind of a big contender of not having the Russians at the next Olympics, considering what they're doing. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next poll says the Russian central bank takes emergency measures to save the ruble, and is it too late? 52% said the ruble is going to die. 40% said, it will just keep devaluing. 5% said unsure, and 4% said the ruble will recover. And I think the Russian central bank hiked the interest rates up to 12 or 13% or something like that. So a pretty major hike, and I really doubt that the interest rates going up is going to save the ruble. The ruble is much worse off than simply having an inflation issue. It is going downhill fast because of the war, and also, obviously Russia being cut off from several Western countries, which were helping to supply them with a lot of goods. So the ruble, in my opinion, is going downhill. But to say it's going to die, it might be a little too early. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say the currency isn't going to die because the Russians have to have a currency of any kind. Even countries that have failed currencies, like for example Zimbabwe, they still have their own currency. It's just that nobody uses it. So I would say the ruble will just continue to devalue until it is truly worthless. Is worthless right now, but when I mean truly worthless, I mean it'll take 100 rubles to even get a penny in US dollars. It'll continue to devalue well beyond that. Hell, look at Venezuela. Venezuela is a really good modern example in just the last decade of rapid inflation. They still have their own currency, but their currency is so worthless that people in Venezuela use it as toilet paper now instead of really anything meaningful, like actually using it to buy stuff, because hell, it's not even worth anything. There are more Venezuelan, I don't even know what the hell a Venezuelan currency is called, a dollar, a real, I don't know. But there are, we'll call them Venezuelan dollars for now because, well, you know what, let's just pull it up. What is Venezuelan currency? A Venezuelan bolivar. So I didn't even have it right with a real. For some reason, I was thinking about Brazilian reals because Brazil keeps it real. But moving on from that, the bolivars are completely worthless at this point. You can really do anything with them except spin them. And I think that's probably where the ruble will end up being at before long. It's going to be completely worthless. People would rather trade on the dollar or maybe even on the yen, although the yen isn't actually allowed to be foreignly traded. Yen is kept inside of China. Which also is why I don't understand why people say, oh, the Chinese currency is going to replace the dollar. They don't even allow it to be used out of China. There has to be some kind of a special circumstance. The world has to be ending for the People's Republic of China to say that the yen can be used outside of China. They don't allow it. So the dollar would probably end up being what replaces the ruble as actual tradable currency in Russia if the ruble just completely collapses. But anyways, with that, I hope I addressed that fairly well, at least in my opinion, on what will happen to the ruble. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next poll says Poland held its largest military parade in decades today, and will this serve as a deterrent to Belarus? 50% said yes, it will be effective. 30% said, at least it's a good attempt. 10% said unsure, and 10% also said no, it won't be effective. Excuse me. And on this one, I would say it's a good attempt. Belarus would be crazy to do anything to Poland under any circumstance because they're protected by NATO. So I don't think the military parade is going to really change anything. If Belarus wants to attack Poland anyway, then I guarantee you nothing like that, like a military parade, is going to stop them from doing anything because they're dead set on doing something crazy if that's their mindset. But I think right now, Belarus is just trying to posture. It's doing things to try to intimidate. But they're not serious because if they were, they'd be pretty much suicidal. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say first, everyone is correct. It's not the yen. That's Japanese. It's the yuan, I believe it's called, which is the Chinese currency. I'm not really even sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it's not the yen. Anyways, moving on from that and into this, I would say the Polish military parade wouldn't do a lot militarily. Military parades have no worth in the military world beyond just showing off the armed forces. But one thing that it will do is it will send a message that they, on the diplomatic level, not the military level, that they are not going to be playing any games. They are willing to pull out the whole 9 yards in the form of everything that they see in the military parade to fight any kind of aggression or violation of sovereignty that the Belarusians, the Russians, or both of them through the Wagner may try and pull off here within the next few weeks or months. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one. I'm still getting flamed for the currency mix-up. And I have to tell you all this. Wait a minute, say what?
Juan?
Not Juan. Not Juan. Dude, do not sell Juan, man. What the hell are you doing? But let's see.
Oh, Juan. Like you're saying the currency?
Yeah, I thought it was Juan. Well, let's just...
A yuan?
Well, how to pronounce...
A wan.
Yuan.
No, a wan. A wan is Korean. Wait a minute, what?
It's a yuan.
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 Yeah,
So,
yeah, yuan. I said yuan.
Nah, man, you said wan.
I pronounce.
Juan.
Look, I pronounce it in every way possible, so I can't be wrong.
So it's a yuan. So now we know. So there we have it. I actually have never heard it said that way before. I've heard yuan.
And you're calling it a yen?
I was calling it a yen. That's Japanese currency. Yen is what the Japanese use. And it's actually pretty devalued. Like, if you actually look at the conversion rates, yen isn't really worth much. Won is South Korean, and then yuan is Chinese. So, interesting. So, we're learning something new every day on this channel. We're learning something new. Before this, just so that we all know, I'm not completely illiterate in currency. The U.S. uses the U.S. dollar, Canada uses the Canadian dollar, Britain uses pound sterling, the rest of Europe uses the euro, Ukraine uses hryvnias, Russia uses rubles, India uses rupees, which is kind of an interesting name for a currency because it sounds like rubies. But anyways, moving on from that, trying to think of any other... Oh yeah, the Philippines uses Filipino pesos. Also, most Spanish-speaking countries use pesos as well of their own kind. There's Mexican pesos, just normal pesos from Spain. There's Brazilian reals. and a million others. But for some reason, all of the currencies in Asia, except for yen, are just for some reason like out of reach of my knowing. Like I just don't know them. So I learned a good bit tonight. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Hopefully, we don't have one person run off and go, "The enforcer is an idiot," and then they'll say something like East Germany was a part of the Soviet Union, which then negates everything they say from here in forward. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and we are fresh out of poll questions, so we're moving on to the super chat questions now. My brain goes completely blank. And our first super chat question goes to Dill, who puts in a $20 donation, and thank you very much for that support.
Dill Pickle.
They said alt for Norge, Stad by Ukraine. Greetings from Norway.
Hey, Norway! I like it. And thank you so much for the support. And thank you, Dilly, for being from Norway and also being a part of the Lee Spring Army. You are a part of the LSA division of Norway, which is really cool. And also, I don't know what the first part is. I bet you it's Norwegian. So unfortunately, I don't know exactly what that means. But thank you so much once again for the greetings from Norway, and thank you so much for supporting this channel and helping us to keep it running. Folks like you help us to keep the lights on, help us to do everything behind the scenes, including going to law school, which interestingly enough, loads of y'all have like seriously asked about that in the live chat. I don't know if you've been seeing that, Matthew, but like every time I look over, someone's like, "Hey, how did law school go today?"
I have seen it.
And so, really quickly, while we're on Dilly Dillinger's super chat from Norway, and thank you once again. And also, by the way, Norway actually does not use euros. They actually use kroner, Norwegian kroner. And then the Swedes, you know what they use? Swedish kroner. Pretty cool. But anyways, moving on from that, some of y'all have been asking, how did law school go today? It went pretty well. Interestingly enough, we're actually both keeping up with what we need to be doing pretty well. I mean, the readings can sometimes be thick. Really honestly, it doesn't really even seem that thick. Like 20 pages before a class and some case briefs. Like I think I wrote up like 17 case briefs for one class. It isn't that hard though, as long as you do the work, which is something that I'm always into believing, is that nothing is hard if you just put yourself to the grindstone and just get to it. So it's actually not been that hard. It's been really interesting, to be quite honest. And a lot of people want to talk about the cases. Like there was this one today that everyone ended up getting confused on, and everyone's still trying to find an answer to, I think, which is Spano v. Perini Corporation, which is a New York case that made it to the New York Court of Appeals that is about liability for negligence when it involves blasting. But that's a whole other story for a whole other time, because I just got I just got a notification to stick to the chat, which is a good point, because I'm about to go rabbit holing here, because we also have to get up to go to law school like early in the morning tomorrow, so we got to kind of make sure to roll this thing back a little bit time-wise. But it's been a good day. It was a great day, and we're both having a good time with it. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Thank you so much once again for support, Dilly Dillinger. I hope we were able to address your super chat fairly well, and thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat goes to Trister1, who puts in a $20 donation, and thank you very much, Trister, for that support. And he says, "Are you doing your shorts during lunch and researching the internet during morning class breaks?" And for me, I've been doing my research during lunch as well on Twitter. So yeah, I've been doing that during law school, and then I get home and I recorded the one the other day. I think the Enforcer is doing the same thing.
Pretty much, yeah. We're both kind of doing the same things there. We're still trying to put out videos while we're at law school. Found out that's not going to happen at law school. We are going to have to come home to film them regardless, and also the schedule kind of works out that way. But that's how we've been doing it. So if you watch a video from this channel and it's coming out in the middle of the day, we did a good amount of that work in law school. And not saying that I violated any traffic laws today, but I also tried to find news on the way home while I was stopped in gridlock traffic and also at red lights. So trying to do everything we can to keep everything rolling and to utilize every minute of our time. It's not a mindset, it's a grind set. And we've got to keep pumping out the news for you guys. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, Trister. I hope that does address that really well, because your support helps us to keep on the grind and to keep this news coming out like it always has been. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Siri, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Siri, for that support. And they said, keep up the good work and interesting observation. On main highway from Krakow to Ukraine, U.S. military trucks are allowed to exceed the speed limit by 20 kmph. And shout out to the LSA 8%. And take question from the chat.
And thank you so much for the support. And thank you so much for giving a shout out to the LSA, the best community on YouTube, no doubt, hands down, undefeated champion. And also, it's very interesting here that I actually didn't know that they could exceed the speed limit in between Krakow to the Ukrainian border. That's actually news to me. So thank you for sharing that, because that's something I will put in my head for the rest of my life and remember. And also, thank you so much for supporting this channel and helping us to keep this thing running and sharing tidbits with us. And so with that, thank you so much once again. Long live the Lee Spring Army and Slava Ukraini. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Richard Rody. Actually, this is the live chat question requested, by the way. This one goes to Richard Rody, who says, how will Ukraine get food and water to Crimea when they get it later on?
So, while under an ideal world, they would have gotten water to Crimea through a little canal that they built. You can actually see that canal going from Novogorkovka on satellite footage down through Ukraine and then into Crimea itself. And that was kind of how they got a lot of the agricultural water and drinking water to Crimea before. But of course, the reservoir is empty, so that's a little bit of a problem because there's no water pressure, there's no water. So what they would have to do to get the water back into Crimea at a normal rate is that they would have to rebuild the Novogorkovka Dam, which would take years. So they will probably have to actually truck in the water to Crimea. Or they'll have to import the water from elsewhere, like Romania. So that's how they'll get the... Huh?
That's all.
But anyways, the other thing, the food, that's actually pretty easy. It's just about trucking it in. And also, the Russians are kind of doing that right now, and somehow they have been able to support the large majority of even tourists going to Crimea. So it probably wouldn't be that difficult for Crimea, and it will also build up a pretty prominent Ukrainian transport industry that may even branch out internationally, maybe. But with that, I hope that does answer that question. And thank you so much for sponsoring a live chat and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Dilly Dillinger once again, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much once again for the second support of the night. And he says, happy to be here.
And we're happy to have you, Dilly Dillinger. And I got to thank you so much for the support once again and helping this channel to keep on running, because folks like you, no lie, are able to make this stream possible. Y'all help us through y'all support to do this as our job and to be able to be on here tonight. So thank you so much for the support and being happy to be here, because you're part of the reason of why we are able to be here like we are every night nearly, except for Monday. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat goes to Colin Burgess, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Colin, for the support. He says, for the coffee fund from North Carolina. Also, what's the story behind the animal noises? And why do you love them so much? Well, the animal noises are always put in by our longtime viewer, Duncan VR. That is pretty much the only time we do animal noises anymore, unless it's a yeehaw, but that's really not an animal noise.
Are you calling cowboys animals? What the hell?
That's why I said not really. And why do you love them so much? Well, we love them so much because Duncan throws them in, and we have to oblige. But Enforcer, what say you?
It's iconic. We like them because they're iconic. But at the beginning, Matthew was actually really perturbed, to use a big word, whenever
perturbed.
Perturbed. When he had to read them off, because he was like, man, he's like, what the hell is this? But it grew on Matthew. I thought it was funny from the start, but it grew on Matthew and both of us and the live chat, and everyone just busts out laughing. It's iconic. Like, it's just an iconic thing. And so we just love it because it's a tradition around here to have the animal noises. If we didn't have the animal noises, it wouldn't be a normal night like tonight. Like, we haven't had a super chat from WVR with animal noises in it, so Matthew hasn't had to do them. But that's why the animal noises are here, and that's also why they're funny, is because it's such a long-going tradition. It's been going on ever since the beginning of the war. And also, thank you for the support, Colin Burgess, from North Carolina, the LSA division in North Carolina, and also for supporting the coffee fund, because that Nitro Busy Cold Brew is what's keeping me on life support right now, so that way I can be hype as hell while we run this show. And so thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Steve Turn, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Steve, for that support. He says, hey there, what is the name of the Guatemalan currency? Clue, it is also the name of a bird.
I don't know, actually. I would be completely ignorant to that one. I would have to declare ignorance. But let's pull it up. Guatemalan currency. And what do we get? It is a quetzal. It's a Guatemalan quetzal. That's pretty cool. What the hell is a quetzal? Let's pull that
That's a
up.
bird.
Man, that dang a bird. Let's see. Oh, it's a really pretty bird. That's a really nice looking bird. Look at that. It's so green.
Man, look at that bird. That's like something you'd see on one of those like TVs at the store when they're trying to advertise and sell it to you. Like to show you the colors on the TV, they'll put like a bird like that on the screen.
Yeah, you know what it kind of looks like, that color green? It
Like,
looks like
what does it look like?
it looks like that soapy color green. It looks like this thing's about to turn straight to the camera in this picture and go, "You're not a dish, you're a man," and go through the whole like Sasquatch soap thing.
Man's got to try to say some soap.
But I mean, like, really though, it does have like that soapy green look to it. Like that really like neon green soap from like Irish Spring or something.
I gotta say, I like this bird.
I like this bird. It's a cool bird. And so thank you for
It's
sharing
not the
that.
biggest bird, but it's a good bird.
Man, you know what they used to say though? I'm the biggest bird. I'm the biggest bird. But anyways, with that, wait. Oh, never mind. No, I was about to say something else about this. But look at its tail.
That bird's wild right there.
Man, that bird be wildin' though. That thing be dripping, really. I mean, like, man, on God. That thing be
Damn,
dripping.
son, where'd you find this bird?
Man, that thing be bussin' for real. But anyways, with that, thank you so much for the support and sharing that little fun fact with us, because I didn't know that the currency was called that, and I didn't even know there was a bird called that. But thank you so much once again for support and sharing something cool with us. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Burnaby Alex, who puts in an $8 donation. And thank you very much for the support. He says, excuse me, damn cough. That cough comes back in waves. It's back on me again. And he said, my prediction is that the Kurds Bridge will be taken out this week.
You might not be wrong. I thank you for the support. I never crystal ball though, because while I do a little bit of crystal balling with frontline projections, who knows when the Kurds Bridge is going to be attacked? Hell, it could be attacked right now. All right, well, that didn't happen.
I mean,
but
if the Ukrainians want to smack it on down, they can go right ahead. We need some more than just smoke on the bridge. We need some, explosions.
We need some spans in the water. So that way, when I report that there are spans in the water, some random blithering idiot out there can say that it is not destroyed and it's clickbait. It's a going tradition at this point. Got to keep that going. But anyways, hopefully some point in the future it will be hit. Maybe it will be this week, but who knows? It could be next month. It could be the next hour. You never know until it happens. But still, thank you so much once again for support. And I'm in your camp. I hope it does happen this week. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support.
And our next super chat goes to DB, who puts in a $5 donation. And thank you very much, DB, for that support. And he says, he didn't say that, but I did. And DB says, LSA, and he puts in the Ukraine flag with 5 beers behind it.
Damn. People are getting sauced up in here. But still, thank you so much for the support, and Slava Ukraini. And I've got to be honest with you, I hate to be a downer, a rain on this parade, because folks drink. It's a normal thing, but we don't drink. I don't know what it is with that. Just never really have taken a liking to it. Now, not to say we have not tried. I think Matthew and me both tried what the hell was that thing, Matthew? We're gonna call it a Kievan Mule because I don't really like the actual name of the thing, but we tried a Kievan.
They need to rename that drink after what's happened here.
Yeah, I think it needs to be called a Kievan Mule. Like, I think that would be fine, but we tried a Kievan Mule, if you'll get what I mean. It's a Moscow Mule, but I'm renaming it because, Russia. But it was a Kievan Mule. I was like, it's okay. I could really do without it. I mean, I'm just not really into that much. So, like, 5 beers, too much for me. Too much for me. I can't even like handle like a sip of the Kievan Mule. It's just like, it's okay. I just went back to drinking water. But anyways, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And long live the LSA and Slava Ukraini. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support.
And the next one goes to Dark Warrior 137, who puts in a 5 and says, anyone who says to give up territory to make peace does not realize there is more than territory in those occupied areas. And there's there's people and families too. And my goodness, my cough is going horrible. I'm like over here breathing. I'm not really gasping or anything.
I heard that while you're reading that. You're going, and it's like, oh no, he's about to blow. But anyways, thank you for the support. And I would certainly agree with what you just said right there. It isn't just land. It's food. It's strategic. It's industry. It's economy. It's everything. It's anything that you can imagine. There is more to an area of the world than just the land that's there. There's a load to it. There's people living there. There's culture. There's everything. So, it's kind of, and also that doesn't even factor in that giving away land is appeasement. We don't practice appeasement anymore. We saw what happened with the Germans with appeasement. It doesn't work. Historically, it just doesn't work at all, no matter even if it is the Nazi Germans or not. It just does not work. And so I don't think appeasement, like is even being suggested as a hairball idea, is a smart one to even suggest as a hairball idea. It makes no sense. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on rolling. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to CK Bold, who puts in a 5 and says, take a live chat question. And of course we will, and thank you very much for that support. And the live chat question goes to Drunky Monkey, who says, have you guys heard about the underwater drones that Ukraine is making? It's pretty cool looking.
That's called a torpedo. I'm just kidding. That's what someone said in the live chat earlier. But yes, I did see it, and it looks really cool. Hopefully, it'll have a lot of promise when it actually gets here. When it actually gets in use, because it looks like it will have a lot of promise. It's pretty much a remote-controlled torpedo with an incredibly long range. So with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again for sponsoring that live chat and helping this channel to keep on running, CK Bold. And also, Maddie, I got to ask this. Where is Jesus UCSB? I saw him in the comments of the video that we made earlier today. He was the first person to comment. But where is he in the live stream? Like, I've been wondering that.
Where is he?
Where is he? Like, we found out that, I don't know if this is too much information, but one Biggie viewer that's been gone for, like, weeks apparently was almost dying from COVID, and we didn't even know where they were. So, like, what's happening to Jesus? Like, he's been disappearing as well lately. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Chef Pat, who puts in a 5. It says the 2 missile S-300V launchers are anti-ballistic missile launchers, 75-kilometer range, and Slav Ukraine from Toronto.
Hey, it's Slav Ukraine from Toronto in Canada. Why the hell did I think that? I thought that Toronto was in Vancouver for a moment, but nope, Toronto is here. Man, don't we know something from Toronto?
Someone,
we
know like, people from there, yeah, but not something.
Oh, I was trying to keep OPSEC there. Thanks, pal. Thanks, but anyways,
man, people is about as vague as they can get. How are people going to deduce who that is from saying people?
There's psychos out there that know where we live and all that crap, and they're going to figure it out.
Oh, and now you blew it.
Well, yeah, but anyways, that's why I was trying to say something.
Anyways,
man, I'm telling you, I get no respect around here. I try and ensure operational security, and it's just blown away. Oh man, I'm telling you. But anyways, very cool to hear that you're from Toronto, because we actually know folks who are from Toronto. So really cool. And I also thank you for the support, helping this channel to keep on running. And what happened? Reread the line.
Let's see. The 2 missile S-300V launchers are anti-ballistic missile launchers, 75-kilometer range, and Slav Ukraine.
And I thank you for sharing that with me, because that is important information to know, the range of those kinds of SAM batteries. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support, and thank you for being one of the LSA members from Toronto in Canada. And with that, we are on to the next one. But thank you so much once again for support and helping this team to keep on rolling.
And the next one goes to Alex Yurchenko, who puts in a 5 and says, Mr. Corgi at Scuba Snack Fund.
Like, Zoink Scoob, I think he's getting obese. Raggy. Just heart failure. But anyways, thank you so much for the support to the Mr. Corky Treat Fund. Mr. Corky is actually thin, very thin. We don't even know how to plump him up because every time we try, he just throws up like all the excess food. So he just stays thin. Well, not thin. He stays thin. He stays thin, and then he turns into a Finnish swummy. But anyways, he stays thin. So we can't plump him up. So we'll make sure to give him some extra bones. Maybe he'll eventually plump up. But still, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again.
You know, something that's kind of shocking to me is nobody's ever questioned why the Scooby Snacks, cause that stimulant effect like that it does.
Dude, it's
like
crack.
what's in that snack? Like it's supposed to be dog treats. Why is it making them go berserk when they eat the Scooby Snack?
Dude,
what's in that stuff? And why are they in
with,
a van riding around the woods with like weird people in the woods?
Say it with me. When you're in the van and you're sitting in the back and you open up the bag, there's crack in the snack.
Yeah, and how are they making money? Like nobody ever sees them going to a job.
Like, Zoink Scoob, I think we need to make money. Ruh-roh Raggy, Bitcoin farm. Oh my God.
And they always have to eat the Scooby Snacks. If they're not eating the Scooby Snacks, they're all depressed and down. It sounds like something's in the snack.
Dude, it sounds like an upper. I'm not gonna lie, it sounds like an upper to me. But anyways, we gotta get off of that. Because you can start rabbit holing there. Because Freddy is a freaking young pioneer, man. I'm sticking to my guns on that. He is dressed like a young pioneer. He is like a role model citizen. That is a damn young pioneer if I've ever seen one. And they're in the freaking Scooby-Doo van that the Soviets used. Like you can't make the stuff up. Like that was just like Freddy is a commie. He's not even a pinko. He's just a commie, straight up. So with that, I hope we addressed that fairly well. We got to get out of that rabbit hole. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Zyper Sniper 1 yet again, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Zyper, for that support. Here is a Norwegian, a Leeson, alt for Norge. I said Leeson. Alt for Norge means all for Norway, and I recommend to visit the country one day. It's beautiful here.
What? Here is a Norwegian lesson. Alt for Norway means all for Norway. Hopefully I said that right. And I recommend to visit the country one day. It's beautiful here. And Zyper, I want to take you up on that. If we were not in law school and doing the show, which eats up all of our time every day, I would love to travel all across Europe. Because Europe has so many interesting cultures, people, and places. And, you really think in America that you have it all. You have the deserts, you have the kind of like a jungle in southern Florida in the Everglades, although it's not, But anyways, you have everything biome-wise in America, every kind of landscape you could imagine. But then you go to Britain and you learn that kind of like difference in landscape is like had for every few dozen miles in Britain. And it's like that for everywhere in Europe. Like the landscape just changes massively from one small area to the other. And I say small area because it's relative to America. Like England is the size of Alabama. So to us, that's relatively small. But when you get over there, it feels massive. And it's weird because like Britain felt like the size of the United States, but it's only the size of like Montana. It was just bizarre. But anyways, I would love to go everywhere. Like, the top places I want to go are back to the UK because I love the UK. To the Netherlands. I want to see the Netherlands. Like, not like Amsterdam, but like everywhere but Amsterdam because Amsterdam's too mainstream. I want to see like real Dutch places where real Dutch people are, not the tourist trap. And I want to go to Norway too, and I want to see everything, like truly everything. And so maybe one day we will make it over there. It probably won't be during law school or the war. It'll probably be after both of those things are over. But I can't wait. I would love to see it all. And so thank you so much once again for... Oh, I'm hearing a reverb.
The hell's happening? My mic just like turned off for some reason. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can, and the reverb's gone now, so, that's weird.
That's weird as hell. I started hearing you through my computer, and then my mic turned off, and then it turned back on. It's fixed, though, whatever happened.
What the hell? But anyways, thank you so much once again for the support, Cypher, and helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you for the little Norse lesson. And one day we will get over there. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Barry Woodward, who puts in a 5 and says, I'm not sure 7,000 viewers have the chat visible. Enforcer Matt, can you speak now to the fantastic folks viewing now to hit the like button and get it done? And yes, hit the like button. We're at 2,000 likes, so a tremendous amount. So if you would, hit that like button. It helps us out tremendously. And we're not at 7,000 viewers anymore. We're at, I think, 4,600, but still, that would be a big help. Enforcer, what say you?
And I got to thank you so much for the support. And probably all 7,000 people don't have the live chat open. Some people listen to it as a podcast, which I found kind of funny today because one of the professors that I have said that they are a huge podcast person. And I was so close to leaving the class. And while I was leaving the class, I was going to say, hey, we run a show. But the thing is that I have said that to like 100 people at law school now. And, I was... I'm kind of over that now. I'm like, I did that to see how many of them will watch. Their demographics are like accurate because the age groups that watch are the ones who are actually interested. It turns out that's mostly true because law school students are in the ages of the 20s, low to high 20s, and that's a smaller demographic of viewers that we have. And it turns out that, from what I understand, none of them regularly watched the show. They like maybe watched it once or skimmed it. And that was it. So I was like, okay, well, apparently people in that age group just aren't interested in the stuff. And that's why our demographics are like from the 30s all the way up until like the 60s and 70s, which is kind of sad. But anyways, moving on from that, I still thank you for the support. And I hope that kind of does address that fairly well. Like we've been plugging it everywhere. But if y'all want, make sure to slam the like button because it does help out this channel a great deal. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, shout out to Jexa, who puts in a $1 donation without a comment. And thank you very much for supporting the channel. And we also have a $2 donation from Wahoo343.
Wahoo!
Which is, they are called AN94 for the first rifle and HK416. And I thought that looked like an HK. It looks pretty cool. I'll be honest though, it didn't register in my mind it was the HK416. But it's a very nice and very expensive rifle. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I thank you for the support and sharing that with us, but I'm not sure if that was an AN94, because let's go to the list of users. The only users of the AN94 are the IRA and Russia. How did it get in the hands of the IRA? Reasons, but nevertheless.
Come on, fight like a man.
Come on out, you black and tans, come on and fight me like a man. But anyways, this one, sadly, is not the rifle that we saw the Polish using, but the HK416, I would put money on that it was probably an HK416. It looked a lot like one. But then again, almost every AR platform rifle looks a lot like the other, unless if it's an M16. Those you can tell out from the flock very easily. But everything else that's kind of like an M4 carbine, those are really hard to tell apart from each other. But it probably is an HK416. But with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and we have an $8 super chat from Russ Rizzo, who says, What do you think about the robotic land drones like the Boston Dynamic Dog and sending robotic St. Bernards with barrels of vodka to clear the trenches?
And thank you for the support, Russ Rizzo. And I would say that those things are massive improvement. I think there's a lot of potential to be had in the robotic dogs and also the robotic people. It's going to be freeing up some of the lower end jobs. Well, actually just getting rid of lower end jobs, really. For example, working at fast food restaurants, things like that. Frees up a lot of the population to go do other things, other jobs, and therefore more economic activity, more progress. So I think that they're great, not just on the economic aspect, but also the military aspect, because that dog can carry a lot of an infantryman's kit and lighten the load of what they're actually having to, kind of ruck with instead of having to carry that all on their back. So the dog would help out a great deal just on the logistical side of things. As far as clearing trenches, it could do that too. We've seen them mounted with machine guns on their backs, and I'm sure that's a really good idea. But I feel like that might need a little bit more fleshing out. Because at the same time, while it can do it, I feel like the dog would kind of be vulnerable to rifle fire if it didn't get off the first shots. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again for the support. And holy moly, we were just we were just talking about that while you go. Hey. But with that, we're on to the next one. Thank you so much once again for the support, Russ, and keeping this channel running.
All right, and we have an $8 super chat from Duncan VR, and he says, "Ba mooba, baba. There was an ant meme in the show. Meow. Matthew has to make an ant noise. Beep beep, baba. Meow. Wolf. Shoo. Elephant. Oh man.
Oh man. But I thank you so much for the support, Duncan VR. And Matthew, you got to hold up your end of the bargain. This is a mutual assent, Matthew. We had meeting of the minds here, and the contract says you must make an ant noise. But what noise do ants
Now
make?
you know that mutual assent and meeting of the minds are two separate terms, don't you?
Yeah.
Oh no, you didn't. I could tell.
yeah, I just messed up there. They're not the same. But then I thought they were, and I said them as the same thing. Well, it looks like I just failed. Anyways, Matthew, you've got to make an ant noise.
What kind of noise is? Oh, now hold on a minute. Who's heard an ant talk? Because if you're hearing ants talk, you're in trouble.
Oh, see, let me think of something an ant would make a
Now
noise.
that vocal ant that was in the Twitter comments, that ant was saying something about this is all lies. Like we know that the ants aren't in the fact finding business, so you know.
Wait, hang on, man. Hang on. I know what noise they make. The termite media, they're lying to you. They want you to think that termites are a good thing and they're eating through the wood, but they don't want you to know that the dirt's really supposed to be where you're living. You're supposed to be making your home out there in the dirt. But the paradigm of the termites, they don't want you to know that. They're turning the freaking, what the hell would...
Wait a minute, ants are conspiracy theorists?
They're turning the freaking ladybugs stupid. But anyways...
Damn.
But with that, I hope that's what the noise an ant would make. Because beyond that, I'm completely lost. But still, thank you so much once again for the support, Duncan, and helping this channel to keep on running. And I hope that addressed that fairly well. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well, like I just said a second ago. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 5 from Margaret Hemsley, who says, "I so miss you on Monday, and please pick a live chat question."
And thank you so much for the support. And thank you for saying you miss us on Monday. That's kind of the whole point. We miss Monday, so that way everyone appreciates us more. I'm just kidding. We miss Monday so that way we can actually have a break for a bit. And now it's really important because that allows us time to catch up on law school stuff for that week. But with that, thank you so much once again for the support, Margaret. And we will make sure to get a live chat. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
And this one goes to Wandrin, who says, "Is it true that Russia doesn't use pallets for logistics? It sounds baffling if true."
From what I know, maybe. I don't really know that for sure. I'd actually have to declare ignorance on that one, because while it seems like it would be plausible, at the same time, in the 21st century, not using something as simple as a pallet sounds absolutely insane. But they're Russian, so, you know, it's not out of the picture. But with that, I hope we addressed that fairly well. Thank you so much once again for the support, Margaret. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 5 from Dark Warrior 137, who says, "I'm playing a submarine game called Cold Waters, and I installed a mod that lets you fight the Russian Navy, so I get to turn Moskvas into coral reefs."
Dark Warrior, I've actually played that game. I actually have that in my Steam library, and it's a good one. I didn't get to play it a lot, though, and kind of got over it quickly, but when I was playing it, it was a cool game with thermal layers and all kinds of nerdy crap to make Submariner people, or people who just think submarines are interesting, really into the game. I thought it was a great one. And so that is really cool to hear that they have a mod like that. And I'll have to look back into that game and maybe get that mod so I can play it for about the 20 minutes of free time I have a day. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to San Fan Belly, who puts in a $5 donation. And thank you very much for that support. And they said, "What do you guys think of Armored Core 6?
Armored Core 6. Sadly, I would have to declare ignorance on this because I don't know anything about this game. I've never even seen anything similar to it. I've never even seen Armored Core 5, if there is one. I'm guessing there is because this one's numbered 6. But with that, I thank you for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and with that, we're moving on to our live chat questions. And up first, we have the Morse code decoders of the stream: Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, and Paul Schultz. They said tonight's Morse code cipher is, "With the support of the world, Ukraine will continue to win. Glory to Ukraine, and long live the LSA."
That's the sound of money. And y'all hit the jackpot. Y'all got the Morse code message correct. And hopefully that statement will remain true. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Thank you all for deciphering the Morse code message once again while I lose my train of thought there. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this live chat question goes to Pakating, who says, "Should Russians give up land in compensation for their aggression and to achieve peace?"
Nah. I think they should just give all of the land that they have taken back to Ukraine, and they should pay possible war reparations for the damages that they have caused to Ukrainian property and land. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again for the support. Well, actually, thank you for that interesting live chat. I'm getting stuck in a loop because I saw a super chat come in. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 5 from Neil Vizinant, who says, have a good day tomorrow and remind the enforcer he owes a video game mock. And also live chat.
What's a video game mock?
I think he meant to say match.
Oh, a match. A matchstick. But anyways, thank you so much for the support, Neil. And we will have a good day tomorrow. We will. Because, hey, I get to sleep in a little. Matthew does not, though. He gets to suffer.
No, I don't. I don't get to sleep in.
He doesn't get to sleep in yet, but he will be sleeping in other days. But anyways, thank you so much. We will have a great day tomorrow. And maybe I will try and get a video game match. And also, we will get a live chat. And so, we are right back to the live chat. So thank you once again, Neil.
All right, so right back to the live chat questions. We have one from Richard Jones, who says, do you have any sense of how the Challenger 2 capability makes defenders feel on the ground?
Sadly, we don't know. We haven't really gotten a lot of observations from the Russians on going up against the Challenger 2. So sadly, we don't really know. So I'd actually have to declare ignorance on that one due to a lack of information. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
The next one goes to Dale Alaticus, who says, have you ever heard of Ukraine using thermal imaging from the drones to spot mines? Very clever.
I did see that. It was a CNN thing, though, so it was copyrighted, and I couldn't show it on stream. Because we're big into copyrights. You know, we are going to law school, so I feel like it's very important for us to pay attention to copyright. But I did see it in moving beyond it being a CNN thing. That was a really genius thing. So, like, to explain it really quickly, Matthew, the sunlight warms up the mines since they're made of metal, and as night falls, the ambient temperature drops, but the mines stay warm enough that you can actually see them on infrared.
Now that's something.
Yeah, and so they can go out.
That's really ingenious, actually. That's nice.
Yeah, I mean,
I wasn't being sarcastic then. I was actually trying to process that statement in my head, and I'm getting tired. So,
man. Oh, man, I'm telling you, you're getting tired or something? You should have drank enough coffee. You should have drank 400 milligrams like me. Oh, man. But anyways, with that, I hope we addressed that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And moving on to our next live chat, we have one from WNNR 1957, who says, do you think Russia will soon announce victory in Ukraine and pull troops home because of Russia's economic collapse?
Maybe, but at the same time, I'm not really sure because they've been dealing with this economic collapse for a while and it hasn't led to them backing out yet. And they are like on the precipice of just falling off the economic abyss. So maybe they will, but who really knows? Because it still seems like they're dead on determined at this point to keep the war going, and there's not even a sign of wavering, at least on the government's end. The army is another story, though. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Steven, who says, will we get any updates on the ZNPP tonight? I'm hoping everything there is stable and out of peril.
Everything is stable at the ZNPP from what we understand. The reactors, some of the reactors are online right now. But beyond that, there are apparently no explosives on the reactors, in the reactors, or anywhere actually around them. They're around the perimeter of the actual facility, which is a good ways away from the reactor, and they're landmines. So from what we understand, the situation is stable. And so with that, I hope I addressed that fairly well. And we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Sika Games, who says, are all of these villages that Ukraine has taken back, are the folks still living there?
No, they were either evacuated a long time ago, or they most likely, well, really, they got evacuated or they ended up dying there. That's kind of the reality of it. I was trying to find a way to sugarcoat that, but, you know, it's war. And while we always try and sugarcoat it, the fact of life is that they either were evacuated by the Ukrainians or they were forcibly removed by the Russians or they ended up dying there. So from what we understand, no one's living there at all anymore in any of these villages. And so I hope I addressed that fairly well. And we are on to the final question of the night. And so who is the lucky last person to put in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Christian Cruz, and he says, since the invasion in 2014, about 1 million Russians have moved to Crimea, and what should Ukraine do to them, or do with them?
Well, if they retake Crimea, I think they should end up deporting the million Russians, because they are only going to end up causing massive cultural problems and giving the Russians another excuse to do something in the future if they wanted to, because there will be a cultural enclave of Russians there. So it would be better to just deport them if they retake the area, because they're not even Ukrainian citizens, they're Russians illegally living on Ukrainian land that was occupied by a foreign power. So there would be a lot of legitimacy to just uprooting them and sending them back to Russia. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I thank all of y'all so much once again for watching. It's been an absolute honor knowing that at the peak, there were 8,000 of y'all online watching tonight. We're entirely honored to know that so many of y'all find this channel to be a reliable source of frontline news, of course showing picture and video evidence of what's been going on in the war. And if y'all did enjoy and are new to the channel, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, as these videos come out every single day of the week, 6 days a week, except for Mondays at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, covering the war in picture and video evidence. Not only that, we run daily war summaries when there is enough news. Sometimes there just isn't enough news at that point in the day, so we can't run one, but those come out practically every single day, while Neil Wisenant throws in a 2 and says nope. And for 5 seconds, that was true. But with that, thank you all so much once again for watching. Good night, good luck, stay safe, take care, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army never dies.
And good night, LSA. Thank you all for another great stream, and Slava Ukraine.
Yes. The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.